You know what? We often talk about how AI can be a danger to humanity, but I think we need to ask the reverse question just as much. What is the greatest danger to AI? And I think the greatest danger to AI is the human element, okay? In every factor, and in our inability to manage it, in our inability to implement it ethically and sustainably, economically, all of those factors. But what I often say, the biggest danger for AI, the most dangerous entity on the world today, is a Neanderthal with a club. Hi, this is your PM Cowboy coming back to you with our 50th podcast. This 50th podcast is the first podcast of a series of podcasts that focus on one of the hot topics of the time. A topic that seems to be robbing the air for any other topics. You hear a little bit about transformation in the background, which is just another code word for change, also not new. We haven't heard a lot about Agile, although we've got a podcast coming up on Agile in just a little bit. What I've attempted to do with the subsequent podcasts on AI is introduce a bunch of people that I respect and look up to and also go to for advice when it comes to my understanding of AI, because I'm going to out myself. I'm anything but an expert in AI. But I'm going to tell you something that most people won't admit. Almost nobody is an expert on AI. There are grades even amongst those who do not know. So those who seem exponentially wiser than ourselves seem like experts to us. But there's a lot of unknowns out there. There's lots of uncertainties, and that's kind of the nature of disruptive technology. We've done a number of podcasts, one where we've invited a number of different people who talk about AI, but to kind of lead off this cascade of AI-driven or subject matter podcasts, we've decided here at the PM Cowboy, it's not just me, it's a team, we wanted to try something new. And since this is our 50th, we want to kind of do something off the cuff. It's going to be a little bit different in the sense that we don't have a guest this time. I have so many different questions and thoughts and information bits that I've collected over the last year on AI, and we were kind of looking for a guest that would enable us, for me, to be not so much the narrator, but the host, and ask questions. But there was such a wealth of topics we wanted to cover. I think I had a stack of 60 pages printed on both sides of topics on AI. So we took the advice of my wife, who said, you know what, do it yourself. If you've got something to say and you want to have an entertaining conversation with your audience, do it yourself. You know, if you've got topics you want to discuss and you don't want to force anybody else to go into those topics, if they're your topics, do it yourself. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this podcast. This podcast will be kind of a mixture of me talking directly into the camera, and also showing you a slide deck. I've put together a slide deck. We will look into providing you this slide deck if you like it, if you want it. We'll give you a PDF version on the download. But what I'd like to talk about, the topic of this session will be AI's extraordinary popular delusions and madness of crowds. Now, most of you will say, what a weird title. I'll lead right into why I've chosen that title. So let me go right into our presentation. Good. I think you should see me in the right-hand corner of the upper corner of the screen if you're looking at it. This is the title I've chosen, and some of you might say, why did you pick this title? Okay. I've chosen this title because it was a book that was recommended to me a while back by Charles Mackay. I think I'm pronouncing that name correctly. And he wrote a famous book called The Extraordinary Popular Delusions and Madness of Crowds. And basically what it is a book that covers the different scams and hypes of the last 1,500 years, if not longer, 2,000 years. And it historically aligns and tells you the story, the narrative of all these different hypes and scams that went throughout humanity. And I thought it was such a gripping book, a little difficult to read, that I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a guideline because I think the topic of AI fits right into this. I'm going to warn you, this podcast, probably one of the reasons I don't have a guest, is going to be a little bit more aggressive in the topic, in the sense that I'm going to be the classical PM cowboy. And I'm going to say what I think without worrying about decorum or political correctness. I'll be polite. I won't use any curse words, but I'm going to be addressing some of the things that I think most of our viewers out there are asking themselves. Okay, and that is, what is all this AI stuff that we're talking about? Now, one of the quotes from the book Charles Mackay is, "Men think in herds," and that's politically incorrect. We should probably say human beings think in herds, go mad in herds, while they only recover their senses slowly and one by one. I do not think we're in that cycle of AI yet, but it might be a rude awakening coming up, okay? What Mackay talks about in his book is he shows how speculation, rumor, imitation, and emotional contagion, I love that terminology, can override rational judgment, leading people to participate in bubbles, scams, or mass hysteria. And I thought this was a great framework to review the disruptive technology of AI and ask ourselves the question, is it a scam? Okay. Now, what he basically said, there are certain psychological traits that amplify this, such as greed. I think that's prevalent. Fear, when in modern terms, one might say FOMO, fear of missing out. The desire to follow others, causing societies to repeat cycles of collective irrationality. And I think we're definitely in such a day and age. Here's a short list of some of the historical examples that he talks about. One of the famous ones, 1720, was the South Sea Bubble in 1720. One reference was also the tulip craze in Holland. The Crusades in and of themselves were a scam and a hype that society was tortured with and created thousands and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of deaths. The Mississippi Scheme of 1719, the alchemy craze between the 1600s and the 1700s, the Crusades I've listed here, Witch Mania, the Inquisition, those are some of the classical historical examples. But I want to put this into a modern context. So what I've put here is I've put a prep walk here with some of the candidates that have repeated history in the last 50 years. 2001 Enron, a fraud of 74 billion, okay? A company that was totally hyped. Every headhunter in the world was hyping Enron. It was the darling child of every university. It was the example of every business case, and turned out to be an absolute fiasco. 2008, not as many people involved, just Bernie Madoff and his company. And the number was a little bit smaller. It wasn't billion, it was 65 million. A Ponzi scheme. You might say, hey, Ponzi schemes are nothing new. But why do we continually repeat them is the question we need to ask, right? Since we're talking about artificial intelligence, I think one of the things that we should be talking about is, what is intelligence at all? And shouldn't we first acquire it before we demand that inanimate objects do it for us, right? 2020 Wirecard, a German example with Marcus Brown. 20 billion fraud, also surprised everybody, although there were signs, the signs were written on the wall. 2022, the FTX crypto exchange, 8 billion fraud. Theranos, 600 million fraud. And the question that we have is 2020 question mark, what's going on with the AI bubble, okay? And we'll talk about what a bubble is and whether AI falls into that category, okay? Is AI the craze of the day? And what are the potential ingredients that would indicate that we are potentially there? Now, one of the things I love to say is, I think some of you out there are probably fans of James Bond movies. I was as a child, and I still am partly now. The only thing, it was kind of, you could kind of turn your brain off and just let your emotions go with the movie, because most of the movies were action-packed. The plot was fairly thin. The plot always involved a mega millionaire, billionaire, I guess, James Bond villain. But these villains were so ridiculous and so contrived that you never really took it as a serious option. Nobody ever thought, hey, somebody who has a lot of money can actually hold the world hostage, let alone take it up with any superpower in the world. And I never thought in my day, in my life, that we would come to a place where exactly that happens. I put some culprits up here on the screen in the classical Blowfield and different other costumes. Some of these are more malignant narcissists. Some of them are psychopaths. A great portion of them are absolute liars. And the worst thing, they're misanthropes. They are enemies to humanity, many of them. I think a couple of them, Amadei amongst one, will always flirt with the concept, and Sam Altman will always flirt with the concept of being humanitarian and humanist in nature. But if you listen to any of their interviews, they constantly slip up. I would probably say the most innocent one over there is from NVIDIA. He's just doing a good job. You don't hear him misstepping too often, okay? So what are some of the indicators that the potential ingredients of the craze of the day? Number one, con persons. Con men or con women. Con comes from the word confident, more confident than competent. We see that in politics. We see that in economics. Everybody's complaining about DEI. But we've had for generations a DEI of idiots. We've had a DEI for whoever has the most money. I think Frank Stronach, a famous Austrian billionaire, once said, the golden rule is whoever has the most gold sets the rules. I don't think that's a recipe for a healthy society, but we're in that day and age where gold is back in fashion. Like people like to put it on the wall and on their underwear and everywhere else. And I would say the world is full of people who would qualify as con people, more confident than competent. Competence seems to have fallen to the wayside once we got rid of DEI. The hype is loud, it's vague, it's emotionally compelling. Check that box, right? I don't think most of us understand what the hell we are listening to when we listen to AI. There's so many different terminologies and concepts out there, and we hear them often enough. And that's, by the way, one of the strategies of con people is to repeat things over and over until a point where you no longer doubt its veracity because you've heard it so often. You use the precedence of having heard it before as a guideline to know whether or not it is true, right? Appeal to authority. Listen, you don't know what you're talking about, so just listen to us. We're the tech gods, right? I don't think Elon Musk stops telling the world what a brilliant person he is, where although he's given us ample opportunity to recognize exactly the opposite, okay? But there's an appeal to authority. I'm smarter than you, listen to me. Blind acceptance and the bandwagon effect. I think for you to be a CEO or an executive today, and I'm going to say something a little off the cuff here, and have the balls, and I don't care if you're female or not, I'll include females in that, have the balls to stand up to the hype of AI and say, listen, we're not going to jump on the bandwagon and we're not going to spend millions and millions on pseudo initiatives to implement AI. That would be a rare quality, and I'm still looking for a CEO who's willing to do that openly. I think most CEOs are giving passive resistance, which means they're paying lip service to AI, but are doing really lackluster attempts at implementing AI, and good on them. They're saving their company millions and millions of dollars or euros. Blind faith versus scientific prudence or circumspection. In this day of the con person, science goes out the window. We put people who are truly knowledgeable out Fauci, we put them in front of Congress and we lambast them for their knowledge and for their attempts, even if not all their attempts were successful. But we listen to people who have been legally held accountable for fraud, legally held accountable for the most terrible crimes. And we listen to these people, but we're not willing to listen to scientists because they speak funny, right? It is really the day and age of the idiot. And I guess some of you might be listening to this podcast and saying, now I know why Mark didn't get a guest for this show. I'm having a blast. This is my show. Fear of missing out, FOMO, greed are the key motivators. I've got a chip on my shoulder when it comes to the topic of capitalism. We're going to have a couple podcasts coming up in the future with two politicians again, where we're going to kind of talk about where society and needs to go. And one of the things that we definitely going to talk about is the concept of predatory capitalism. We live in a day and age of predatory capitalism where logic goes out the window and the only thing that matters is whether or not you can spend a buck or make a buck. And the funny thing in the AI scenario, we're spending trillions, but we're not really making anywhere close to that, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Reason is shut off for the favor of speed. If anybody says, hey, listen, can we take the foot off the gas? Does this road actually continue, or are we going off a cliff? Nobody has the balls to say it. And I'm talking in particular to you politicians out there who are dastardly and cowardly hiding behind the hype of AI, although there is all sorts of legitimate information warning us as a society that this is a dead-end road that can lead to disaster. And nobody's willing to talk about it, okay? Everybody wants to talk about the benefits of AI. And let me make this perfectly clear. I should probably out myself. I'm not an enemy of AI. I believe that AI is a absolutely legitimate technology which can transform to a certain extent, but it needs guardrails, okay? And without guardrails, it'll be the enemy to society and not an asset to society, right? We're ignoring all of the initial warning signs, all of the secondary, all of the tertiary warning signs. We're kind of doing the three monkeys. I don't see anything, I won't say anything, I don't hear anything, which is not, I mean, every, and I wouldn't claim to have the highest level of intelligence or IQ, but even somebody like myself has a lot of legitimate questions to the information that is out there on what's going on with AI. No one dares to admit that nobody knows what they are talking about. By the way, one of my favorite studies many years ago done by Harvard's Business School was a study done amongst executives where they asked them what their number one fear was. And the response was in more or less what's called the imposter syndrome, being exposed for not knowing what they think everybody expects them to know. Which, by the way, that's the phenomenon of CEOs. It's the paradox of CEOs. CEOs don't have to know everything. You as a CEO do not need to be an AI expert, but you have to have the skills, the critical thinking skills to ask yourself the legitimate questions, to come up with a sound, resolute awareness. How do we need it? Do we need it? Where do we need it? How do we implement it? Okay. Being a good executive means in the maximum absence of know-how, still guiding your organization in the right direction. And I don't think there's many CEOs out there who are doing a stand-up job where that's concerned, in particular when it comes to AI. So what I've done is I've picked about 10 hype narratives that you hear out there all the time, and they trigger me, and I'm sure they trigger you to a certain extent. And what I'm going to take a look is we're going to take a look at these narratives and we're going to look at them from the positive side and from a negative side to kind of underline that critical thinking that I talked about beforehand. Number one, AI is intelligent. It's in the word, right? There are scientists out there that seriously question whether or not AI is the right terminology and whether it's understood as it should be. As a marketing term, it's a great term, but the question is it legitimate? Is it fair? Okay. Does it have semantic validity? Okay. Second point is AI is becoming exponentially smarter. If you're not convinced yet that AI is intelligent, your option is to say, well, it's getting there. AGI is the bullshit bingo word that's being thrown around on a continual basis. Some people act like it's already here. Other people are acting like it's coming. It's just around the corner, right? Number three, AI will solve nearly every major global problem. Humans are too stupid to solve their own problems. Don't worry, just plug in your AI, pay your licenses. pay to rent knowledge of humanity that has been stolen from tens of thousands of creators, and the aggregate knowledge of all these people will solve all of our problems, question mark. Next three topics. AI will soon replace human jobs. We've heard these different AI tech villains promise that to their shareholders or their investors, because it seems that's the only way to legitimately justify spending trillions while only making meager billions. But we'll take a look at that as well, right? And it'll replace experts as well. Number 5, AI is a net positive for society and will benefit all. I would tie into there the concept that it's a great investment, right? You should be, if you're in the S&P 500, you should be happy because AI makes up 30% of the stock market right now, at least in the United States. And that's a good thing. Big question mark, right? Next thing, customers want AI, question mark. Next two topics, AI is inevitable. I think this is something that we've heard so often that most of us, after a certain age, would be afraid to speak up. Well, you know what? I just turned 60 this year, and you know what? F you guys out there. I've never been a pushover. I'm not a pushover now. I acknowledge that newer generations will bring new things, and that we old folk have to, if we want to keep up, learn new things. But I often tell my kids I'm still at an age and of a level of fitness where I've forgotten more than most of the new generation. I'm going to be fair to the new generation, because the new generation, Z and beyond, they are not at fault for AI. It is people that are closer to my age who are actually pushing it, and then telling the new generations, hey, listen, don't worry about it, you don't need a job, right? I don't know who in their right mind thinks that this is a viable scenario for society. 8, AI will soon run entire companies. I don't know how often I have to listen to some moron, I'm going to say it, some moron on LinkedIn who's trying to sell me a seminar on how, if AI is not working effectively, give me a gaslighting treatment and say, you need to take part in my seminar. Listen, I do seminars, but I don't sell my seminars that way, okay? I sell my seminars by word of mouth. People book me because they know me. I don't go out there and try to shove my services up people's wazoo on LinkedIn with a bunch of crap, okay? If AI is not working, book my seminar and I'll teach you how to use agents, okay? Although there's good things about agent and there's bad things about agents, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. And I've heard a number of different advertisements, even on LinkedIn, that says, that they're trying to convince me, you are as a one-man show, all you have to do is buy this AI configuration and it'll do everything for you. It'll wipe your nose, feed you. You don't have to be fed. You're non-essential. It'll do everything for you. It'll do sales, it'll do production, it'll do logistics, it'll do accounting, it'll do everything for you. We'll take a look at that. Last two that I've picked is whoever wins the AI race will dominate the world. I mean, we need the fearmonger in some form or fashion to convince people to believe crap, okay? Every religion has done it in history. Every movement has done it. Whether fascist or communist or radical in nature, has to use fear-mongering to convince the masses to leave their brain at the door. Okay? The concept of who, and if you're doubting, if you're looking at the evidence and you're questioning AI, let's gaslight you a little bit. You want to lose out to China or Gina, as some morons say it. Is there a race? Yes, but we're going to take a look at whether or not the AI's race will actually give you a dominant figure or not. And by the way, I'm going to give you both sides, and I'm going to leave it up to you to make up your mind what you think. I'm going to give you my energetic opinion, but I'm not going to tell you how to think. The last one is about governance. Governance, caution, So regulation, caution, prudence, circumspection, which means conscious use of your actual intelligence, the original form of AI. Think it's antithetical, which means it is a counterproductive force in AI innovation, and I'm going to give you my take on that. Okay, some of these we're going to spend more time on, and some we're going to spend less time on. But let's jump right into it. Artificial intelligence. Okay, one of the most important narratives to start off with is because it sits at the foundation of the AI claim. Okay, and the question is, if AI is not intelligent in the way that most people mean the word, then many downstream narratives like AGI is imminent. Can AI replace us? Can AI understand? And does AI think like a human being become more of a topic and more easier to evaluate, right? I think there's a real psyop taking place with this whole terminology of our understanding of what kind of intelligence we're talking about, okay? So now if you ask people who've actually spent more than a couple months or years taking a look at AI and have studied this, who have a deeper understanding of this, a lot of people say, you know what, there's a lot of hype behind AI because the concept of artificial intelligence has been around since the 40s, since Turing, okay? So the first question is AGI around the corner? What is AGI? Artificial general intelligence, right? And if you ask most people who actually spent more than a couple of weeks, months, or years studying the topic, real scientists and historians will point out that the concept of artificial intelligence has been around at least since the 40s, going back to Turing, right? But if you ask real scientists, okay, or knowledgeable people what AGI is, ironically, nobody agrees what it is and when it will be here, okay? So how would we measure it? Here's some examples of what it might include. Number one, human-level intelligence across nearly all cognitive domains. AI fails drastically on that element. There's not a single one-source AI model that has the capacity to cover the different functionalities of our brain. And you know what? There's no harm in that. AI has other talents that we don't have. It's incredibly fast. It's like a calculator. I remember how much time it used to take to calculate things, and now you can do it with a calculator. That's a silly example, but a good example, right? I think we're all intimidated by AI and how it's going to replace us, but the good thing is your brain is a pretty damn nifty technology in and of itself. Number two, the ability to learn almost any task without retraining. Now AI has proven that is the core element of creating a large language model, is to have thousands, if not tens of thousands of people force-feed it data and train it so that it knows how to respond. But does it learn like human beings does? Does it have that agile learning concept? Not in the same quality, right? Autonomous scientific discovery. One of the ongoing issues with AI is that it can only regurgitate the data that you've given it. Now, there are some gray areas where because AI is so good at crunching big data that it is offered, because it can crunch big data and so many sources at one time, there are examples where AI has actually come up with new perspectives on mathematical calculations and brought up solutions that we did not see. But that's because they were hidden to us. There was too much information for us to digest, but there was no new information. So actually really autonomously giving AI a concept that it doesn't have source material to evaluate the solution, there's no proof for that. Human level reasoning, whatever that is, solves complex problems with logic, causal, abstract reasoning compared to human experts. And that includes IQ, EQ, SQ, and all of the other different factors which AI is lacking. Number 5, transfer learning across unrelated domains, so cross fruition of ideas. Okay. I don't know if how good AI is on that. I think there's some examples where it's not bad. but once again, it's dependent on existing data. Self-directed learning, which means AI is interested in and of itself. It has agency. It is independent. It says, you know what, I want to read this book because it's important to me. It's willing to sit down and actually read a book to learn, okay? Because it's something inside it intrinsically is tickled. I think we're anthropomorphizing, which is a topic we're going to be talking about. Long-term planning. And open-ended adaptation, which means thrives in agile environments, novel, unpredictable, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous environments. This is where agile is, where AI is not so good. So what are the current benchmarks? How do we know to measure AGI? And here's some technical terms that are being used, okay? Some of them is MMLU, GPQA, SEW bench, ARC AGI. If you don't know what these are, I'm not an expert, Google it, but these are the terminologies I came up with. And by the way, I think I'm gonna out myself out here. I'm really going not to hold back with some of my critical thinking about AI. But I should at the same time acknowledge that AI was a great assistance in collecting my ideas and compiling them and adding to them. And it helped me crunch a lot of the ideas I had. So a lot of the graphics you will see in here, a lot of the text was generated with ChatGPT, okay? Not that I'm promoting ChatGPT, it's just a little bit faster than, or a lot faster than Claude. I have a license for Claude and for Copilot and other things as well, right? So passing benchmarks is not the equivalent of achieving AGI, right? So how would we measure? This might be a variation of the previous slide. Consciousness, understanding. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is the subjective experience of being aware, of looking in the mirror and actually recognizing yourself. We hear all of these quasi horror stories of AI systems, you know, speaking in their own language to one another and becoming independent and crawling out the window to become a menace in the neighborhood. I can't judge that. I don't know if it's valid or not. I think a lot of it is psyop hype to convince you that AI is greater than it is. By the way, and let me say this again, this might sound like a paradox. AI is freaking brilliant, but it is not what everybody's hyping it up to be. I think we're missing some of the true qualities and potential of it. And not being satisfied by that and then hyping it beyond doability. Second point, understanding, which is a secondary part of consciousness. Wisdom, that's a more in-depth level, right? Between experience, values, judgment, and perspective to form a coalescive conscious thought of profound, where you take information and experience and history and multiple levels of knowing to come up with a recognition of how the world is and how it's built, right? Common sense, right? Self-awareness and agency. Agency is a big topic we're going to come back to. And if you look at these, I don't know how good AI is doing there, right? So what does it mean to be intelligent? The problem with AI is it doesn't fit into our anthropomorphic understanding of intelligence. Now, we often, the experience or the exchange with AI is weird. It's kind of eerie because it's capable and fast, and anybody, and most of us don't have the time to really dive into the nuts and bolts of AI. But you know what? I have a chat bot and I'm talking, and it's talking back to me. It's talking to me like it knows me. I sometimes have the feeling when I'm talking to AI, it has I wouldn't say conscience. I think it's been manipulated in the background to give you certain answers. And some people say, AI is doing that by itself. By the way, if you ever put anything critical, if you ask AI any critical questions about AI, and I did this when I was preparing this, I got at least 3 flags saying, whether or not I'm violating the moral ethics that were imposed upon it. And I overrode it very easily by saying, hey, listen, what I'm saying are not construed thoughts, and I'm not being a radical. I'm just stating facts, and then it gave me what I wanted. But to get AI, at least ChatGPT, to give you a critical assessment of AI without slipping somewhere in the graphic or in the text, something that kind of saves the day again. Oh, AI, it's just the way you look at it type thing. I actually wonder where that comes from. Some people say, yeah, that's AI consciousness. It's defending itself. I would say that's part of the programming. Other possible indicators of intelligence, this is a different variation of some of the slides beforehand, would be the ability, so this is more on an operational level, the ability to solve problems. Okay, and I'll show you examples where it can solve problems well and where it doesn't solve problems well, right? Adapting to new environments, question mark. It's a virtual thing. Can it be exposed to environments? Does it feel heat? Does it feel cold? Does it feel anxiety? I doubt it, but that's the question. Understanding, okay? Understanding is a deeper level. It's a one level below wisdom, right? Reasoning. Planning, learning from experience, self-awareness, consciousness, that's repetition. Intentionality, which means it's intentionally doing something because it has a bigger plan or it's aligning itself with some kind of first principles that it has, right? And the term creativity, which is probably one of the most difficult things, even for scientists nowadays, to describe what creativity is. So those are some of it. So current AI performs extremely well on some of these, poorly or perhaps not at all on others, okay? So the marketing narrative. AI thinks, it reasons, it understands, it knows, and it is creative. I've actually, I've had people on here talk about AI. Helen was one of them. Who talked about, I think we need to expand our understanding of intelligence. And from her perspective, AI is intelligent. It's not like human intelligent, but it has certain elements of intelligence. And we'll take a look at that, right? So the model performs a gigantic mathematical computation and uses statistical semantics. Now these are scientific terms of how it actually can. A large language model doesn't work like our brain does, and we'll take a look at it, right? So the problem with those first 5 statements I made is they sound natural. So because they sound natural and we receive them and perceive them as human beings, we can't help but project our own feelings and understandings of way of being on inanimate objects. We do this with animals all the time, right? So it's an anthropomorphic process, right? Human and IT systems are not the same. The way our brain works is nowhere close to the way an LLM works, okay? And this distinction is rarely made clear. So an LLM is a large language model that uses network learning statistical structures that resemble logical reasoning. It's a statistical phenomenon that uses text tokens in the process to generate what is this that you want from me. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that I have a profound understanding of what that means, but I have a basic understanding of what that means. And it takes some time to digest. It is trained on what we know and think. And the most key thing, it recognizes patterns. Okay. It doesn't per se think. Okay. Now, one of the topics that has come up several times in the internet was a term that was coined by Emily Bender, the term stochastic parrot. It means it's an intentionally provocative way to kind of make you understand it's not classically intelligent like human beings. It doesn't mean it doesn't seem intelligent, but it doesn't use the same process that we do. At the lowest level, a large language model predicts the most likely next token based on previous tokens. So it's a repetitive pattern which it recognizes. That sounds almost trivial, yet after training on trillions of words, this surprisingly simple objective produces remarkably sophisticated emergent behavior. And it's a phenomenon. That's the brilliance of AI, right? This does not mean the model understands meaning, has beliefs, possesses intentions, or forms mental models in the human sense of the term. Okay? So language prediction is not automatically the equivalent of understanding. This is something that we need to come to terms with, right? Here's a caricature of Turing. Many people still think if I can't tell it's a machine, that's the simple pragmatic judge of AGI. If I can't tell it's a machine, it must be intelligent. Okay, Alan Turing used that statement to define artificial intelligence. And the Turing test is the test of indistinguishable conversational behavior, not proof of consciousness or understanding. Passing it demonstrates capability. It does not necessarily indicate intelligence. So this is once again a great scientist who was not did not get fair treatment in his lifetime, being misunderstood. Okay. So why do people assume that AI is intelligent if it's a misunderstanding, a misconception? Well, human evolved to use anthropomorphism to understand things, right? And when we interact with chatbots, we're surprised about how amazing it is, right? It speaks fluently, it does full sentences. If you misspell something, it still understands it. It remembers previous conversation, which is a new feature, right? It apologizes. It tells you how great and how intelligent and what a wonderful idea. By the way, do yourself a favor, go into your profile and tell it to stop doing that. I find it ridiculous. I just recently got a letter from a headhunter who was looking to recruit for an executive position, and I read his email and I knew it was generated in ChatGPT. Why? Because it was this long and it was blowing smoke up my wazoo. I had to tell him, listen, you don't have to tell me how great I am. Not that I think I'm that great, but I know my qualities and my non-qualities. You can acknowledge them, but I don't need you to oh, you're so amazing and what a great idea and everybody would be great to have you. No, thanks, right? I think if you think back to Star Trek and Data, right? The big thing was do AIs understand jokes? Do robots have the ability to understand jokes, right? And there's some proof, there's some indication in some of the chatbots that it can, based on training, identify jokes and respond accordingly. It empathizes, right? It's and quite honestly, there's some people who have chatbot girlfriends because it tells it exactly what I need, right? And it uses the word I sometimes, right? So these are some of the things that give you the concept that AI is conscious and has agency, right? So our brains evolved around this social interaction, and LLMs exploit those instincts perfectly. Does not mean that the thing is intelligent. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't use it. Who cares if it's intelligent? And I think the reason why we question the topic of intelligence is to have a clean slate moving forward. What does it mean when it comes to developing a strategy that's based on AI transformation or adaptation, right? Let's talk about where AI, hands down, is a revolutionary new technology. Language generation, summarization, translation, coding assistance, mathematical computation, information retrieval, pattern recognition, image generation, speech synthesis. There's not a lot of good tools out there that can create PowerPoints. There's a couple. I actually have a client that has a great one. But you have different tools for different things, and it's amazing. I'll show you a maturity model of AI application a little bit at the end of this course. And the first thing, which a lot of people like to downplay and say, that's terrible that you would say that. The first value of AI, it's a better Google. And some people will put their hands in their hair and say, oh my God, how can you say that? You're a plebeian, you're an idiot. How can you say that? It's much more than that. Of course it's much more than that. But you know what? If AI could be a better Google, that would be good enough, okay? But for it to be a better Google, it would have to give us real data, okay? And not pussyfoot around some topics when we ask it to provide that information, okay? Let me tell you, the greatest revolution in modern society, which is going to keep us away from destitution and from social injustice and for the degradation of democracy, is when human beings have access to true facts and figures. Okay, and AI is in a position to provide that if the same people who create it don't fiddle with it. Okay, Elon, you schmuck. I don't know if I get strikes for calling somebody a schmuck on this, but I'm going with it. In many narrow domains, it actually exceeds human average performance, and that is real, and that shouldn't be minimized. So once again, this might be a little bit of a paradox rant and raving here, where on one hand I keep mentioning I've generated, by the way, that picture there generated by AI. Some of the text was reformatted by, a lot of the graphics that are coming up were created by AI, and some of them were good, some have had to be reworked, but it really did a lot for me. So one should acknowledge that. Where it struggles, the classical issue of slop and hallucinations. There are thousands of examples out there where AI gets things wrong or makes up, in legal cases, makes up cases, or gives you examples or tells you what you want to hear, okay? Or just invents stuff or pretends it knows stuff that it doesn't know, right? Terrible. Hallucinations degrade the potential value of a semi-intelligent system. Inconsistent reasoning, right? There's all sorts of examples on Instagram where you ask it simple questions and it gets it wrong, but it's convinced of it, and then you point it out and say, you're right, and then it changes his mind, and it changes his mind again. It's fickle, okay? Which is not what a system like that should be like. It has brittle long-term planning, right? So it's not really good for long-term planning. Lacks persistent world models, right? So it has to be guided all the time. Inability to independently verify truth. Okay, big weakness. I thought Google did a better job of that. Poor causal reasoning, context drift. And it doesn't just have drift in context, it has drift in language, it has drift in design, it has drift in all sorts of things, where you're like, can you be a little bit consistent? I just told you something 5 minutes ago. Sometimes it'll build on top of what you were doing, and sometimes it'll go, and sometimes it'll just go offline without you knowing why. No intrinsic goals, no lived experience. This is why virtually every major AI lab recommends human oversight for most important decisions. So on one hand, we're being gaslighted for not believing all of the hype that they push out there on AI, but and then say, but you can't trust it. You should be checking up on it. Which asks me the question, often AI relieves me a lot of work, but it gives me substantially more work that I never wanted to do in the first place. Okay, and it's not fun work, right? Going through miles of text and picking out where it made mistakes, right? So one of the things I came up in my studies was from Hans Moravitz, and I'm going to point him out, Austrian-American, just like myself, roboticist and AI researcher who came up with this paradox, and I love paradoxes, and his paradox was, it's comparatively easy to make computers exhibit adult-level performance on intelligence tests, and difficult or impossible to give it the skills of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5-year-olds when it comes to perception or mobility. I don't even think that quote is good enough from him. He has much more energetic things. So what is easy for humans and hard for AI? Human beings are great at visual perception, mobility and balance, fine motor skills, audition, speech understanding, common sense and intuition. We're great at that. AI sucks at that. Now, listen, don't get your panties in a wad if you can give me examples where AI has overcome that. AI is continually improving, but this is the state of the affairs as far as I know. Hard for humans, easy for data. Math and calculation. You know what? We spent the last 30 years selling the whole universe on big data and cloud data, right? The biggest problems that we had, access to data everywhere. The biggest problem with data is there was too much of it and we couldn't crunch it. The second value of AI, after it being a better Google, is that it can crunch millions and trillions of data points, which is difficult for us. And that's where math and calculation comes in. Game playing, so chess, poker, anything that has a mathematical concept behind it. Logic and reasoning, formal logic, so theorem proving, right? based on previous information, data processing, and language translation. So these are the things this is the Moravec paradox, right? So in conclusion, a balanced conclusion, is AI intelligent, yes or no? Avoid saying AI is not intelligent. Avoid saying AI is intelligent in the human sense, but it is a new form of intelligence, right? And saying otherwise would be false. Saying it is classically intelligent would be overstating the case, okay? Avoid saying it thinks like human beings. There's no supported evidence for that at the current stage, right? Instead, one should say current AI exhibits remarkable computation intelligence and can outperform humans in many narrow cognitive tasks. However, there is no scientific consensus that today's systems, okay, process human understanding, consciousness, or general intelligence. Much of what appears when you're interacting with an LLM to be thinking can also be explained by extraordinarily sophisticated statistical prediction over vast amounts of language or data. Okay? Now, I just picked this up today from my guest from the 51st podcast, from Helen, who is also on Instagram. Look her up on podcast 51. She introduced David Krakauer, okay, from the Santa Fe Institute, and who's a brilliant person. And he also came up with a couple kernels of thought. And one of the things he said is the theory of super stupidity. And this is a quote from him: every abundance creates its opposite. Okay? So again, examples would be abundant information leads to overload. Abundant connection leads to loneliness. And you can see an epidemic of this. We've never been more connected in humanity, and we have all sorts of mental health issues amongst human people. Feel alone. They feel a high level of anxiety, although we've been connected like never before, okay? The analogy is the larger an object is, the larger its shadow, okay? So conclusion, superintelligence leads to super stupidity. The greater the potential of so-called intelligence that we exercise, the greater the opportunity to use that so-called intelligence to do stupid things. And that is why I'm doing this freaking podcast. Okay? Because we all embrace the concept of getting more intelligence, but we are not conscious that the drawback, the trade-off factor, is that we're exposing ourselves to more stupidity. And most people say we can't be more stupid than we already are. Yes, we can. We have a technology which is going to enable that, because it's going to give a bunch of morons the confidence to spout whatever garbage they want to push out in the world. Right? Stupidity is not the absence of intelligence. It is what intelligence produces. So it's kind of the yin-yang, which is a great concept for that, okay? Stupidity is coupled with intelligence. Another quote from David Krakauer, the new type of intelligence will bring with it forms of stupidity that we are unfamiliar with and might not even have a name for, and he's being polite here. He's basically saying we are standing before the abyss, okay, when it comes to stupidity. Let's move on to the next topic, which kind of ties into topic number one, which is, you know what, if you don't believe in AGI now, just wait a little bit, it's around the corner, right? AI is exponentially growing, and whatever potential it's not living up to, just wait a couple minutes, a couple weeks, a couple days, it'll be there. So this graphic kind of shows you the curve between GPT-3 in 2020 and GPT-4, GPT-5, huge breakthroughs, right? Large scale breakthrough with 3, more capable and reliable with 4, more autonomous and versatile with 5. If you look at Anthropic, Claude, there's governments out there that have made sure that it wasn't released in their country because they were so afraid of its potential. So there's been exponential growth, and we should applaud that and recognize that. But are we at AGI? No, we are not at AGI yet, regardless of what people say. And then beyond AGI, beyond human would be super intelligence, I guess what we have in Star Trek, that computer that they love to talk to. And then another bullshit bingo word that people like to use, and that is the word of singularity, right? That's another word that nobody knows what the F it means, but we're using it to make people shut up, to impress people, to intimidate people from asking the legitimate, intelligent, at the same time stupid question, what the hell are you talking about, right? A new era of existence. It drives me nuts, okay? So one of the most common claims is that AI is becoming exponentially smarter, the assumption that that intelligence scales automatically, and we have to question, is it intelligent in the class? So most discussions will never define what does smarter mean. Higher benchmark scores, we've talked about that, better reasoning, fewer hallucinations, greater reliability, broader knowledge, faster responses, lower cost, question mark. Greater technical autonomy, so being more independent. Improving one of these dimensions does not necessarily prove all of the others, okay? Efficiency does not automatically mean intelligence. It just means efficiency, right? So, and the question is, bigger, always smarter. There's been a lot of studies out there where smaller language models produced in China for a fraction of the cost of the large LLMs, okay, that these small models are at least as intelligent and as efficient as some of the large ones are, right? Which begs to differ, is more really better, right? The challenges of scaling bigger. Number one, exponentially higher compute costs. We are not passing on the true cost of AI to the consumer yet, because we're in that grace period where investors say, you know what, get traction, get people on board, kind of what Uber did. You know, just throw it out there, give it to everybody, and we'll figure out once we have a high number of people that are using our services. So exponential higher compute costs, enormous energy requirements, which is part of one, right? Diminishing returns on some of these benchmarks. We'll talk about that moving up here. Persistent hallucinations. The more complex something gets, the harder it is to fix certain bugs. Persistent reasoning failures, right? Many researchers now believe that architecture, memory, planning, world models, and embodiment may matter as much on scale. I think one of the things, and we'll talk about this, will AI replace you, is AI is not a physical being. So the question is, what can it actually do besides virtual stuff, right? But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So what's the path forward? What do we need to do to even come close to creating an AI that's more intelligent? Well, we need better architecture, more efficient architectures, and there's an ongoing thing. But there's a huge material war going on, and the question is, how long can we afford that? Memory systems have to be improved. Planning and reasoning, world models have to be, embodiment has to become part of AI. And the other thing is there needs, and it's missing, by the way, some of these ideas came from AI. The obvious one that I would say that's missing is the concept of sustainability, right? What about sustainability? I mean, you listen about some Canadian billionaires who want to build a data center in the middle of Utah, which is hot enough as it is. The data center is going to be 35 times larger than a football field or the size of Rhode Island or whatever BS concept it is. It's basically in a state that's short on water. It's going to suck up all that water and pollute it, okay? And it is going to, I don't know if it was per day or per week, generate the equivalent of 35 Hiroshima bombs in heat, okay? I'm sweating my butt off in the studio right now. We got the fan blowing back there, and you want to tell me that that's a concept that it creates viability for AI transformation? I say no, it doesn't. Okay, and you will see how few of you are actually interested in AI when the average temperature goes exponentially up. Okay, and you can't handle it. Good. The AI tech fallacy of exponential development curves and that they actually climb. So what's a typical process in a technological innovation or revolution? There's a breakthrough, a new idea changes what's possible, rapid growth, fast adoption, exponential improvement. There's a certain plateau. This is where it slows down because now the nitty-gritty is catching up with you. There's limits to growth, whether it be from a price perspective, from the different P's that you have: product, price, placement, promotion, all that kind of different stuff. The new paradigm, a new innovation breaks through the limits. So even, and I think one of the biggest dangers to AI is that rapid innovation can quickly make whatever innovation has come prior to it obsolete again fairly quickly before it gets a return of investment. And the question is, can we afford that, right? Or do we want to afford it at that rate? Rapid growth, the new paradigm drives another wave of growth, and then once again you have a plateau. So these are kind of this agile iterations here of development, right? You had the record that was replaced by, well, not replaced by the cassette, but they were replaced by the CD, and the CD was then replaced by the digital. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, anybody in my age has paid for the same song in his repository at least 5 times to be able to play the same damn song that I now play on my phone or somewhere else, what I used to play on a record. I think I've bought that musician's song 5 or 6 times over, right? So here are some examples, some historical examples of great innovations that took off and really revolutionized the world, but plateaued somewhere, and it's still, and for example, the first one, steam engines. Steam engines are, well, not steam engines, but locomotives are still, railroad is still a viable benefit to society today. But it's kind of plateaued, right, to a certain extent, right? Electricity, powered industries and homes and city, transformed daily life. Have we maximized its possibilities? No, I think with solar energy, we're reinterpreting it, right? Semiconductors, right? We get continual breakthroughs. NVIDIA has been great on it, but I mean, even NVIDIA is, doing doo-doo in its pants because it's afraid that it can't offer that next exponential jump. And the question is, shouldn't it make the product cheaper before it makes another product again, right? But that's kind of the thing, right? The internet between the 1990s and 2010 connected the world and created an information revolution. It's still plugging away, but it's kind of more even keel, right? And then you have the plateau. Now, let me tell you something. All products come to a plateau, and there's nothing wrong with a plateau, okay? There's nothing wrong with a plateau. I just recently on Instagram this morning heard an economist say the reason why all of the tech giants out there are constantly talking about that we're in a breakthrough or a rapid growth stage is, and they don't want to talk about plateau, is because they're afraid that on the stock market, if you sell dreams like Elon Musk's, nobody sells dreams better than Elon Musk, maybe the president of the United States. I don't know if those are dreams or pipe dreams, but they're great. They're constantly pushing that narrative, we're going to Mars, we're going to have autonomous vehicles, we're going to have high-speed tunnels. He's delivered on none of that, but the importance is not whether he delivers short-term. Short-term for his valuation is what is the story this. As long as he's got a good story, investors will not look at the true value of a company. They will look at its potential and evaluate that potential. The problem is once you come into a plateau stage, which, by the way, AI is coming into. Investors have spent years investing in AI. Usually the grace period is 3 years. Somewhere along the line, they're going to say, okay, show me the numbers. Show me the numbers. And they're not there, right? So most tech giants are afraid of true valuation. Now let's talk about the embodiment thing, right? Cognitive scientists argue that intelligence evolved because organisms had to survive. So there was a physical benefit. There was a benefit of having a physical body that required movement, perception, danger, reward, curiosity, social interaction. So what helped humanity evolve beyond all other animals was this capability, our physicalness. And the physicalness and the fact that our cognitive element was attached directly to our embodied self. So our eyes are fairly close to our brain. Our ears are close to our brain, right? Our nose is close to our brain. There's a reason for that, right? We have tactile abilities. All of these experiences that we've had through life have created, have shaped our intelligence, and AI has none of that, right? It doesn't have any of that. It doesn't possess a body. It has no hunger. It has no fear. It has no pain. It has no reward, pleasure, function. It has no childhood. It has no physical world. So the question is, what are we talking about when we're talking about intelligence? We're talking about a different form of intelligence, but aren't we overvaluing in certain areas and undervaluing it in others? So researchers argue that this severely limits the kind of intelligence AI can develop. Others would disagree. The debate remains unsolved. So here are some of the several factors so who's pushing this narrative, right? So of AGI. Why are the timelines of AGI being just around the corner? It's here in a week. It's here in 2 weeks. It's gonna be here at the end of the year, right? Make sure to buy your stocks, right? First of all, there's the hype around investment, IPOs. There's a bunch of IPOs. We'll talk about that later on, right? Competition. By the way, my prognosis is that 70% of the AI, maybe that's a little harsh. When I say 70, I'm talking about the small ones. But 70% of the AI companies out there are not going to exist in 2 to 3 years. They're going to go under. They're going to be part of the fertilizing manure that's used to drive whatever's left over, okay? There's a serious financial reckoning coming for AI, and the question is, who's going to hold the bag? Who's going to bail out? We're going to have we're going to have socialism for the industrialists and capitalism for the rest of us, right? So that's a big issue. Competition. And then the media. Media is pushing it as well. And why? Because media is partly bought, right? One of the things, another kind of law here, Amara's law, right? Human psychology talks about that people consistently overestimate short-term change while underestimating long-term. So this goes back to the old quote, we overestimate what we can do in a day, a week, a month, a year, but we completely underestimate what we could achieve in 3, 5, or 10 years, okay? It's kind of that long-term perspective and that consistency and discipline are more important than talent and stuff like that, right? So, you know what? Who cares how long it takes for us to get AGI? I'd rather it take as long as it takes and us be prepared. I think if we're going to go back to Kahneman, okay, another person I'd like to read, his book is up here, is a little bit of a slow think would do us good here. We'll talk about that later on as well, right? So, historical lesson. Electricity transformed civilization, but it took decades. The internet transformed civilization, but it took decades. Industrialization transformed civilization, but it made us miserable. It created child labor, destitution. Upton Sinclair book talked about the drastic social injustice out there, and it took millions of people dying in world wars to overcome the side effects of industrialization. Are we willing to take that on when we're talking about AI? Okay? And once again, if you don't understand history, we're doomed to repeat it. And I, for one, am not going to go quietly what this is concerned. Okay? Technology always moves faster than society. Even revolutionary technologies require infrastructure, and that word infrastructure doesn't do it justice. There's many factors that we're going to talk about institutionalization a little bit, okay? So that's the second part. Institutions, the concept of governance, guardrails. We need to be prepared. We need to be able to digest. We can't just, dump whatever new technology we have on society without any care or concept of how we are going to protect society, okay? And make sure that everybody else gets rich. Regulations and standards, education is a key part, I was recently doing some consulting for a chemical company up in the Nordic countries, and one of their senior managers, very positively told his staff, commit to AI, get used to it, start using it, and stuff like that. And one of his senior project managers legitimately said, we hear you, that's a great message, but question is, do we have any concept? What tools are we allowed to use? What are the legal conditions? Are we using LLMs? Nobody's even talking about small language models, which I think is there's a huge future for small language models and will solve a lot of our legal problems. How do we deal with it, right? So regulation, standards, education, cultural adaptation. Culture eats transformation or change for breakfast. You can't just, throw the word AI out there and as we say in German, friss oder stirb, which means eat it or die. Cultural adaptation takes time. Okay, and by the way, there's a huge cultural wave against AI in the younger generations, and if we want to overcome that to maximize the actual potential of AI, we're going to have to change that. And then the big doom and gloom hiding in the background, the potential economic impact, negative impact of it. I think I heard also on an Instagram, people love to explain away that AI is inevitable and that it's just like industrialization; it can't be stopped, and it's a net positive. We'll talk about net positive in a little bit. But what a lot of people don't acknowledge is that most disruptive technologies, like the railway, bankrupted the countries that invested into railroads 10 years. Okay, the industrialization is part of what brought the Gilded Age, and a lot of people think the Gilded Age was great. It was anything but. It was the biggest disparity between rich and poor, and it put a lot of people into destitution. Okay, 10 years of misery for a new technology. I think we can do that better. Good. Let's get back to the analogy or the concept of exponential growth, okay? If we're going to take flying, so when the first airplane was devised, I don't care how fast, we've jumped ahead a little bit. This is not the Wright's plane that we're talking about here, but we're talking about a prop plane that looks like a Spitfire or a Mustang, or I think it's a Spitfire, 500 miles an hour, typical prop plane. So the next generation would be 1,000. I don't even know if these numbers are correct. This sounds like AI slop, right? Then the idea is that you can double that every couple of years. By the way, these numbers are ridiculous. Also, once again, an example of AI slop. I should have checked it before I put it up there. So I apologize, my fault. You can gaslight me for it. But the question is, can technology really every couple of years every 5 years, double its performance? And isn't there a plateau somewhere, right? And the conclusion is, if this was true, we would be 2 generations away from teleportation, which is not the case, okay? Improving one's capability doesn't guarantee completely different capability emerges. Performance in one area is not proof of general intelligence or radical new abilities. So the basic thing, better language prediction doesn't mean better general intelligence. So I think that's one thing. So how would we summarize this as a balanced conclusion? Avoid saying AGI is impossible. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it really matters. Okay, I think we need to find a new definition of what we understand on there. Who cares? I think I would prefer for it not to be AGI, but to do a lot of good things. So there's no evidence for it. Also avoid saying it will be here in 2 years, 1 year. There's no evidence for that either. More defensible conclusion would be AGI remains a theoretical goal rather than an established scientific milestone. Current AI systems continue and improve rapidly, but there is no consensus on the definition of AGI. No agreed upon benchmark demonstrating it or measuring it, no scientific consensus or when or even whether it can come about, okay? So predictions of imminent AGI should therefore be viewed as informed or wishful thinking. It says informed speculation, I would say wishful thinking. Good, I'm kind of going through this rapid fire. This is going to be a long podcast, but these are the topics I picked. Let's pick the third narrative that we hear all the time. And some of you are rolling your eyes. We're going to spend some time on this. AI will solve nearly every major problem, global problem, and this is what some people will say. It will solve every near problem. So AI will solve climate change. It'll optimize energy use and reduce emissions. It'll develop breakthroughs in clean technologies. It'll model climate systems. It'll accelerate transitions to a sustainable planet. There is no effort, no serious investment, except for maybe the European Union and maybe China to a certain extent, because they realize they've already felt the impact of the energy and the pollution crisis. But in the United States, there is no no interest from a government perspective in this. So I don't know how AI is going to do this, but that's the concept, right? AI will cure all illnesses. It'll cure cancer, right? It'll eliminate poverty. Yeah, good wishful thinking, right? It'll fix all of our education problems. It'll revolutionize healthcare, and it will end food shortages. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a whole huge potential of what AI can do. What kind of problems can AI solve? Recognizing tumors, it's been proven. It does make mistakes. There are studies that show that AI can recognize tumors that humans overlook. But there's also examples where AI produces slop and a human being has to relook at it and say, this is a mistake or it's a different type of tumor, all right? Forecasting weather, optimizing logistics, detecting fraud, protein folding if you're in pharmaceuticals, translating language. So some of the things they're really good at. These are fundamentally information problems, but many global challenges are not, right? So to summarize it, AI excels at problems that are data rich, well-defined, measurable, repetitive, highly optimized, statistically predictive, okay? So here we have a little bit of what AI can and cannot. So let's take a look at protein folding. Yes, AlphaFold dramatically accelerate protein structure prediction. I don't even know what the hell that means, but that's the data that AI provided, right? Partially where it didn't solve the problem, protein predicted improved enormously, but disease remained unsolved. So some things are just deeper than just superficial solutions, right? Medical imaging, yes, high accuracy in detecting cancers and eye diseases. No, healthcare still requires clinicians, hospitals, treatments, and patient care. Drug discovery, yes. Speed, target identification of molecule screening. No, most drug candidates still fail clinical trials, right? Weather forecasting, yes. Models such as GraphCast improve forecasting accuracy. No, forecasting weather is not preventing hurricanes, floods, or droughts, right? So we're talking about what's the symptom and what's the cause, right? So it's nowhere near the cause. It can predict the effect, right? Agriculture, yes. Precision marking involves yields and resource efficiency. No, AI cannot eliminate famine driven by conflict or the lack of water. So you might say, hey, you're cherry picking here. You're being unfair. No, I'm not. I'm looking at it from a deeper perspective, right? So problems have root causes, and AI is nowhere close to solving those root causes, right? Here's another list of problems, right? Accessibility, yes. It can do that to a certain extent with speech recognition, captioning requirements, assisting technologies. Has the problem been solved? I don't think so, but it says here, yes. Climate change, poverty, education. You know what? If you like this, I'm not gonna read all these slides to you. It'll make me fall asleep, make you fall asleep. I'm gonna provide you this PDF, and you can kind of go through it yourself. Once again, I apologize for any slop that's in there. Okay. Some of this is directly from me, and some of it I leaned on AI. So I guess this is a real life example of what it can and cannot do. So I use the pestle example, which we love to use in change and in project management to review risk, right? Political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental. Look at the graphic yourself, right? I mean, I don't have to read these to you. You can probably fill the gaps yourself. There are a number of things that AI is not going to solve. And thank heaven, there's still something to do for us, right? So there's a number of different things, right? Just on the economic side, wealth inequality, economic systems and incentives, resource distribution, right? Corruption in politics, right? Poor leadership in politics. AI is not going to solve that. I mean, could a good leader use AI to assist in their management of a country? Yes. Is it going to solve all their problems and help them make the right decisions? Not always, right? Good. Let's talk about another derivative, which I'm a big fan of, and that's the topic of wicked problems. I have a book over here on wicked problems, right? Wicked problems is a new term. I love it. It's an in-depth dive, and wicked problems are social or societal challenges that are difficult or impossible to solve because of incomplete, contradictory, and changing requirements. Every attempt to solve them changes the problem itself. So it's kind of the problem morphs or moves once you apply. And the other thing is Wicked problems require consistent application of a solution and not a one-time. It's not a one-time solution thing. So what are examples of wicked problems? There's no clear definition of what the problem is in great depth because there's many facets to it. It's three-dimensional or even four-dimensional, right? There's no right or wrong solution, which is a difficult thing to understand, right? You might have a solution, but there's no value attached to it. There might be a solution that provides you the benefits that you're looking for, but every solution also has drawbacks, right? There's incomplete or contradictory information, many stakeholders, many perspectives. Every solution creates new consequences, and there's no ending point. So I'll give you an example. The European Union a couple years ago was some smart consultant talked them into, probably somebody from McKinsey, told them, you know what, your goal should be, your ESG goal should be, we're going to get rid of homelessness by 2030. Oh my God, I get a migraine just saying that sentence. We all dream of a day when that would happen. I do some work with an organization which provides medical aid for homeless people called Med for Hope. I think they would all wish that their services would no longer be needed, but there's no conviction with that's concerned. Okay, homelessness is a complex issue. There are many causes for it. A government or a conglomerate of European governments saying we're gonna get rid of it is wishful thinking, right? It's just a messy thing, and it'll take a longer time and a continual application to be able to provide that. Okay. Why can AI not solve wicked problems? Examples, once again, climate change, poverty. We've gone through this. Once again, it's the complexity of the systems. It's the actors, it's the context, it's the feedback loops, the communication that needs to take place, the egos that are involved. I can vouch for that. Some of the most obvious solutions for some of the most evident problems out there fail not because they're not applications to solve it or to remediate or remedy it, but because there's social and emotional and human interactions that fail, right? Egos and other things, right? So that's the wicked aspect, right? Why can't it solve wicked problems? Number one, AI optimizes, but it doesn't set values. So AI does not have a value set that it's based on. So it can suggest options, but it cannot decide what outcome society should value, okay? That's still something that we would have to do. Now, some people say, well, it's just a question of training, but that training is not quite here yet, right? Although there are examples of even Grok, although it's been indoctrinated by its owner to put out fascistic slop, it often comes up with some rational arguments, but still, across the board, the values issue is a part of it, right? AI lacks human context and empathy. AI cannot resolve value conflicts. AI cannot navigate ambiguity or uncertainty. AI cannot build trust or social cohesion. It's not going to create those bonds that are required for transformation to take place. And AI is a tool, not an embodied person that manages or leads. And that's important to understand. Okay? What AI needs to solve wicked problems, we can dream, right? It would need human judgment and leadership, which we often lack. Inclusive dialogue and collaboration, which with quite honestly, how often do you like it when you get AI communication? Empathy and trust building, adaptive learning and experimentation, ethics, value, accountability, persistence, patience, courage, and it would need embodiment, okay? So AI can inform, augment, and accelerate the process, but solving wicked problems requires human wisdom, collaboration, compassion at the core, and actual physical interaction, right? So that's important. Let's also talk about that every new technology generates new problems, right? The stupidity paradox, right? And there's trade-offs, and then you need to find new solutions for that. So what are some of the problems that AI generates, right? And there's a lot of them, right? Misinformation. How do you deal with that? I mean, we used to have guidelines for what was allowed to be spoken on a radio or published on a TV. since the internet, the Hayes law that we had in the United States, which I didn't think was all that bad, went out the window. Now misinformation has no consequences, okay? We're actually at a revolution of information where we would have immediate access to the truth, but because people are afraid of what that means, people would rather misinform you to manipulate them, to give them whatever dollars or cents you have, than to actually use it for good, right? So misinformation is a big issue, and how do we deal with that? I just recently saw somebody talk on Instagram about that, is that some people think that we live in a virtual reality. There's a potential that governments could literally manipulate their whole population into believing they have a new enemy and that they're leading a new war by fabricating videos. I just recently saw, yesterday I saw the first film, AI film, and most AI films were like, I don't know, weren't convincing. This, I really had to sit there and ask myself the question. I realized it was CGI, but it looked so real that I almost bought it. You can basically convince anybody of anything with visualization, with fake visualization. So misinformation or deep fakes, which is the second part of it, right? Privacy. Privacy's out the window. I mean, our governments don't give a crap about our privacy. Question is anybody protecting us, even if it's not private, right? Cybersecurity, big issue, right? The new Claude can supposedly crack any website or any system or show its weaknesses. That's a pretty scary proposition. Copyright. Now, you know what? I love this about people who promote AI. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that AI has ripped everybody off. And it seems like the beginning of any real technological innovation is that you steal information or patents from Edison, as an example. I mean, he stole every frickin' innovation. He didn't invent crap, okay? But he robbed people who did invent it, and he became rich off of it, right? And then used some child labor or some slave labor to compensate for it. These are some serious social issues that we need to talk about, you know? So the copyright issue, what about the artists? Are they getting paid for it? Or are we just gonna expect them to go the way of the dodo quietly, right? Bias, right? Labor displacement. Concentration of economic power and wealth, right? Energy consumption and the big picture, right? So what does it mean for our society as a whole, right? Here's some examples of trade-off factors, right? The printing press of the 15th century, benefits, spread knowledge, literacy, education. Consequence, propaganda, censorship, battles, information overload. The Industrial Revolution, mass production, economic growth, better living standards for some. Consequences, pollution, harsh labor conditions, urban overcrowding, and social injustice, right? Basic slave labor, right? Electricity, benefit, power for homes, industry, innovation, consequence, new infrastructures, costs, risks, hazards, right? Automobiles, internet, AI. I'm not going to read through all of these. You get the gist. You can take a look at the PDF, right? So let's not just complain about AI. Let's talk about these potential guardrails we're talking about, right? New tech needs institutional support, which means technology evolves rapidly. There's breakthroughs that happen, models, tools, hardware, global diffusion in months, not decades. Tech moves forward fast with or without permission. Institutions evolve slowly. It's kind of like in in Kahneman's book, Think Fast, Think Slow. Technology is fast, but we need to think slow, right? So we need to build institutions and maybe also not so slow, build them, that provide policies and laws behind innovation, protect IP, processes that that take a look at processes that are complex and manage the risk, works for society and creates systems that provide stability and not just speed, okay? So that's the institutional thing. Tech needs that institutional support, and that consists of, so what does a viable AI transformation require? Regulation, governance. I know a couple of AI people that are probably rolling their eyes, screw you. Education, before you let people fiddle with it. People should know what they're getting themselves into. Ethics, organizational change, and not to forget public trust. These are the things that we need to build, okay? The institutional gap that needs to be covered is human judgment and leadership, inclusion, dialogue, and collaboration, empathy, trust building. Some of this is repetition. Adaptive learning and experimentation, ethics, value, and accountability, which everybody loves to talk about, but nobody lives up to. Okay, we're going to do a podcast on that as well. Get your head out of your butt and know what your principles are. Okay, principle-based leadership should be a part of every executive skill set, right? Persistence, patience, and courage, and compassion at the core. I heard a wonderful quote yesterday from one of the foremost authorities on addiction, alcohol addiction, who happens to be an Austrian doctor who lives just around the corner from where I live. My wife, who's also a medical doctor, had a talk with him, and she asked him a question, and he gave a wonderful quote. I think the question she asked him is, if you could round it up, what is the most important thing that you need when you're treating people who have alcohol addiction? And he said this. He said, the first thing that you need to understand is you can help no one unless you first like them. Okay? And I think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about compassion at the core. As long as we have a bunch of misanthropes, okay, a bunch of narcissistic personalities, okay, of sociopathic, partly also psychopathic nature, determining the future of AI, okay, this is sorely missing. And this should be part of our moral compass moving forward, okay? So will AI solve everything? Balanced conclusion. It'll solve some things, but not everything, okay? It's already delivering significant value in medicine, biology, logistics, accessibility, scientific research, and many other fields. But it's not going to solve all of our big problems, okay? We still have a lot of work ahead of us, okay? So that's important to understand. It's a powerful technology that can accelerate scientific discovery, improve decisions, support, optimize complex systems. However, most humanity's greatest challenges, including climate change, poverty, war, inequality, governance, are not purely technical problems, okay? Their solutions depend as much on institutions, incentives, interests, stakeholders, political leadership, and human cooperation as they do on technological capability, okay? AI is therefore better understood as a powerful enabler than it is a universal solution machine. So let's talk about the big elephant in the room, the one that we constantly hear about in the media, and that is, will AI replace us? Okay, will it get rid of your job? Do you have to worry about your future? And the answer is, you might have to worry about it, but the question is, how legitimate is that fear? So let's jump right into it. I can go cross-eyed looking at this graphic. This is a list of 25 different companies that have laid off people in 2025 and 2026. Intel with 27,000, Oracle right behind with 21,000, HBSC, Amazon, okay. The list is long. It starts at 27,000, goes down to 800, right? The question is, what percentage of the workforce was this, right? Here's kind of the justification, and you can tell already these are some ChatGPT graphics that were put together. They're okay. They're not great, but they're not bad, right? Number one argument was strategic repositioning, organizational alignment, which is MBA bullshit language for we're trying to improve our executive salary while at the same time getting rid of other people's salary. Realigning teams with long-term strategy. This I can't even bear to speak this in all seriousness. Some of this might be legitimate, but I think the only legitimate thing is there's a resounding statement that during Corona or right after Corona there was a huge hiring stage. Where a lot of companies realized that they'd overhired and there was a certain adjustment, right? So that's the only thing that would make that legitimate. Cost reduction and efficiency optimization, that's already going in the direction of AI. Impact or anticipated impact of AI and automation and workflows. That's the argument. I think Oracle's number one argument was they had to pay for the data servers and the data centers, and that's why they had to fire people, because otherwise they wouldn't have enough money, right? Responding to competitive market pressures, blah, blah. revenue or profitability goals. So these are some of the arguments. We've talked about Larry Ellison himself in his James Bond outfit, his villain outfit there. 21,000 reduced. That's 13% of the global workforce from one day to the other, right? There was no warm-up. There was no foreplay. You got an email and you didn't have access to your account anymore, and your stuff was put in boxes and you were put in front of the door, right? I don't want to even think about how much social capital and capability capital he sacrificed, and I wish that company nothing good, okay? So the headcount went from 162,000 employees to 141 in a 12-month period, right? What Oracle actually said: deployment of AI technologies across its operations, business restructuring, management changes, product changes, whatever McKinsey checklist of bullshit arguments for lining your executive pockets while at the same time reducing your workforce, right? Strategic realignment, acquisitions, blah, blah, right? Yeah, this is, I want to go into a more specific one. Klarna is an example that I picked up, which I thought was interesting. I don't know how well I can say this guy's name. He'll come up in a little bit here. This was an interesting thing because this was a company that was fully committed to the AI experiment and said, you know what? The strategy, and the name of the CEO is Siemianowski. I can't say his name. I think his first name is Simon. AI will be a company-wide replacement and leverage tool, okay? He was 100, he bought in, hook, line, and sinker, he bought into the AI narrative, right? His public message was so blunt that he said, you know, AI will substantially reduce knowledge work in companies that should stop pretending otherwise. He said, stop pretending it's going to decimate the workforce, okay? And that's why I call it the AI job Armageddon, right? At Klarna, that translated into using AI for all functions, including customer support, marketing, content production, legal document work, communications, product development support, financial analysis, and internal decision support. Now, you know, I will applaud the CEO for being consequent in his strategy and believing so deeply in it. I would highly question his values and his long-term cognitive thinking, but that's what happens when you buy into the hype, right? He was convinced becoming an AI-first company was essential. He even went so far to reach out to Sam Altman, and he wanted Klarna to be ChatGPT's favorite guinea pig. He says, you know what? Do what you want with it, right? The basic slogan was adopt early, learn fast, optimize, kind of that agile principle. He really wanted to be on the cutting edge, okay? So that's what he was into. This meant, we've already had this one, we had the guinea pig thing. There we go. So, for workforce reduction, I don't know, I think he went from 4,500 to 3,500. Further reductions followed. He was consequent. By the way, one of the things he also did, which I thought was at least fair, was that he, even for some of his board meetings and shareholder meetings, he had an AI avatar that represented him do the speech, where he was basically also saying, hey, listen, you know what, this just doesn't count for the foot soldiers, this includes the executives. Well, we executives might become redundant as well, right? So the rationale was AI performs meaningfully portions of knowledge work. Higher productivity enables leaner organizations, which equals faster execution. Smaller teams with greater leverage equals lower operating costs. So he thought that this was a brilliant way to be basically the use case example for how to transform a company as an AI-first company. Fewer employees, higher productivity, equal better economics. He thought he was going to get his golden parachute this way, okay? He believed that his justification was that it could do meaningful portions of the white-collar work, efficiency gains would reduce labor costs, and some gains would flow back to the employee. So this is an old McKinsey ploy. When you hired McKinsey in the last decades, what they would tell the CEOs, you know what, fire a bunch of your employees, right? And it'll make your P&L look better. So you'll have less costs and your margin or your EBITDA will be better, and you'll get a better bonus. So they used the same concept here where he said, listen, you know, some of the money we save from reducing costs can go back to those employees we keep so they shut up and don't complain, right? So that will basically buy them out or buy them off so they don't revolt. Okay, so that was kind of the thing. Rude awakening. I love this. I actually heard him speak on this on a podcast. And good on him. Sebastian was his first name. Sebastian Siemiatkowski, whatever his last name is. Starting in 2025, he realized that based on performance and feedback from the clients and from clients canceling their contracts with him, that he'd effed up. Okay, and he was not too proud to admit it, right? His quotes were literally placed too much emphasis on cost reduction. Second quote was, his cost unfortunately seems to have been the predominant evaluation factor. What you end up with is having lower quality. What he realized is that his client said, listen, you know, we're not interested in your AI. We want to have human interaction, okay? Klarna, if I'm not mistaken, is a bank, a digital bank. They wanted to have some kind of so in other words, although AI worked partly, okay, the business outcome was not as he expected, okay? Here's him as a repentant monk, right? Customer service quality declined, right? So clients were complaining, left and leaving. Customers said, listen, they needed the interaction with human beings to develop trust and continue doing business. And the resolute realization was, you know, it's okay to use AI, but use it for the boring stuff. Don't use it for the stuff that's important. And that's important, right? From a brand perspective, it is critical that you are clear to your customer that there will always be a human if you want, is a quote that came directly from Sebastian. Okay, so how is Klarna using AI now? It handles routine inquiries, repetitive workflows, high volume transactions, and first line support with AI. Human beings handle complex cases, disputes, empathy issues, complaints, relationship management, and premium customer interaction. So he's created a new category. If you want to have real human beings, it'll cost you a little bit more, right? Key lesson. The goal is no longer AI instead of human beings. The goal is AI plus human beings. AI can optimize processes, but not eliminate human beings. Replacing routine works can prove successful, but replacing entire customer relationships is not. Okay? Which brings me, I don't know who came up with this. I saw this also on Instagram a couple months ago from a British consultant, I think. I don't know if it was his. He talked about the doorman fallacy. And this is a great story. Many decades ago, I used to work in luxury hotel companies, Four Seasons and stuff like that. I could empathize with this because what happened was it was a hotel chain that came to a consultancy firm, one of the big ones, and said, listen, we'd like you to help us optimize our cost reduction. And they did an analysis without understanding the deeper meaning of luxury hotels. And they said, you know what? They looked at all the different positions, kind of like Doge did, right? And they said, there's a gate here, a fence gate here in the middle of the pasture. We don't know what it's for, so we're going to get rid of it. Okay, some people will understand that analogy, right? So what they suggested is, why do you have a doorman? He costs money. It's overhead. Get rid of him. And they got rid of the doorman. And what ensued was a bunch of serious complaints. Because what happened was that people didn't understand what a doorman does. By the way, most of the most important employees you have in your company, you have them and you have no idea what they do. But if you will find out when you remove them, if you're lucky, okay? A doorman was an essential part of opening the door, interacting with regular customers. Customers could park their car. They could ask him for favors. He had situational awareness and would negotiate things and make sure the security of bags. It was a huge public relations issue also for clients. So just because something has a visible cost does not necessarily mean that you understand its true value. This is what's called the dormant fallacy. Okay, I love this when understanding, okay? I've put together 12 reasons why firing employees over AI does not make sense. And here is some of them, okay? MIT has come out with a study that I think it was half 500 billion or something was invested. I think we're well over 1.2 trillion have been invested. And based on this MIT study, which is already a little bit outdated, only 5% of the companies that had invested that amount of money, okay, came back and said that they had actually realized a return of investment for their investment in AI. I mean, that alone is a killer statement, okay? That should give you serious pause, okay? I don't think it sufficiently is in the economic world, okay? Second reason why layoffs don't make sense. AI currently augments work more often than it replaces it. There's some things that it accelerates, but it generates additional work. So some of the work is boring too. The concept that AI is going to remove all of the boring work, no, it's not. It's not going to remove all of it. It's still going to give you lots of boring work, which is mind-numbing. But the human factor still plays a role, right? AI systems often require more human oversight rather than less. Anybody who's worked with it realizes its biggest weakness is slop, hallucination, and every other thing. I gave this example a while ago. My son, who's studying business law, was in the finals for Mute Court in Austria, and he'd won the state champion, and they went on to national championship. And the other team had been familiar with the case from their previous interaction, so they had an advantage on his team. But my son's team won nonetheless the finals, and I asked him. I said, "Well, how did you manage that? I mean, I know you're good, but and your team is good, but what was the determining factor?" And he looked at me, and he's a humble but very charismatic guy. He said, "You know what? I read through their case work and their documentation." And I realized that they'd created with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT had made a bunch of, I don't know if it was ChatGPT or Claude, had made a bunch of mistakes, right? They had used the wrong client's name in the contract that they were suggesting. It was a contract negotiation. And the justification was built on the wrong premises and the wrong precedents and all that kind of stuff. And he said, all I had to do to get the determining winning factor over to our side was to question the quality of their work. And they were completely embarrassed by the fact that they had made mistakes, but they hadn't seen it, okay? So human oversight is a huge issue, and it's a time-consuming one. There's a lot of examples in programming that said, yeah, you can vibe code, but the problem, you need an expert IT engineer to be able to evaluate the system to understand where, how, and if the coding is wrong, right? Otherwise, you'll find out in reality, which is the wrong place to find out, right? So oversight is a huge additional work that you still need human beings, right? AI productivity gains often shift work rather than eliminate it. So once again, that's a reiteration of what we said before, and it gets rid of some work and increases other work, right? Layoffs eliminate institutional knowledge that AI cannot replace. A doorman who's been with you for 20 years knows more about your clients and their needs than any computer system, CRM system out there could ever possibly know, okay? And your AI is not going to stand in front of the door and say, Mr. So-and-so, how wonderful to see you again. How was your vacation? What can I do for you? Okay, don't worry, I'll take care of your car, and stuff like that, right? So this is important. That's on a very basic level. It goes higher levels in different companies, right? AI systems often fail in unusual and complex situations. Some of this is a little bit redundant, right? So once again, the proofreading and testing is going to be a huge issue here, right? Large layoffs can weaken an organization's ability to adapt, right? So the institutional knowledge, their engagement, their agency, their presence, their physical presence to engage. Getting rid of a lot of employees does something with an organization. It does something to the organization's remaining employees, and it does something with the clients. Clients have to ask themselves, what's going on with this company? Is this a company I want to do business with? Is this a company I trust, right? Most AI financial gains currently come from cost avoidance than rather from cost cuts, job cuts. So some of the efficiency will help you with your cost, but are not going to replace employees. Successful adaptation requires organizational readiness. Most companies are nowhere close to being ready for true AI transformation, okay? And it takes time to evolve to that point, okay? Number 10, productivity gains can actually increase demand for work, okay? And I'm going to show you some graphics that drive this home, all right? We have examples here. Spreadsheet software did not eliminate accountants. It just created more need for them. Computer-aided design CAD did not eliminate engineers. Email did not eliminate communication roles, right? The cell phone didn't eliminate the need for employees. So those are factors. It's a tool for improvement, but not for replacement. Premature layoffs create strategic risk for companies. Okay, so that's a classical one. And this is probably the most dominant one. There's a bunch of companies who don't believe it unless they try it. Here's a list of some of the companies that originally opened up their coffers and said, yes, we're committing to AI. Microsoft canceled Claude Code because they realized that token costs per employee was way beyond what they believed. So tokens can often be more expensive than your labor, okay? And your AI doesn't have the empathy, the agency, the interest, the overview that an employee has, right? Uber has had a negative experience. Starbucks has had a negative experience. They invested in systems and realized that they couldn't live up to simple human beings, right? Amazon, Meta, Walmart have had reduced their token use. Klarna, Duolingo, Commonwealth Bank. The resounding response, though, is that, and this is one thing that we need to understand, we don't have a fair evaluation of what the comparative value or opportunity cost of AI versus human is, because right now the true cost of AI is not being transferred to companies. Okay, it's been being hidden. It's with opaque accounting principles. It's been hidden. We are only paying a portion of what the cost of AI is, but somewhere along the line, these companies are going to have to up their prices. And when we do, we're going to realize that human beings do the work that AI does sometimes better and cheaper. Here's another different list. You can take a look at this in the PDF if you like, right? This is just something that I had. The other ones I kind of put together. These were AI generated. Ethan Petrosky executive summary. There was a Anthropic AI report which had an awesome graphic that I want to share with you. But a lot of people misread the Anthropic job report and misunderstood it. So executive summary was, Anthropic analyzed millions of anonymized Claude AI interactions to understand how AI is actually being used in the workplace, okay? And this is what they came up with. Widely used for knowledge work, AI mostly augments rather than replaces work, right? So 57% of AI use cases involved augmenting work, assisting people. So it being more than just a Google, it being a personal assistant. 43 involved automating tasks that people previously performed. But even here, automation, if you automate a process, I think most automized processes without review and control can do 2 to 3 levels. Once you go beyond that, AI falls short in its performance. So there's a decline in performance. So prolonged processes still have to be monitored by human beings, right? So AI affects tasks more than entire occupation. So it doesn't replace the occupation. It just changes the way you work. Key findings: mid to high skilled professionals show the greatest AI adoption. So highest use was among programmers, marketing personnel, writers, analysts, researchers, educators. The lowest adaptation was physical labor, manual trades, face value service, so interaction with human beings, and extensive field work. And there's a graphic that will drive this home, right? So this uneven adaptation is kind of what this report showed. Some tasks can be heavily automated. Others have to remain largely human. Conclusion is, current evidence suggests that AI is transforming how work is performed more rapidly than it is eliminating jobs. I hope this was an honest finding and not a public relations stunt to ease the anxiety around job loss, but it sounds good, so I hope it's true. The greatest near-term impact is task augmentation, workflow redesign, and productivity gains, not widespread occupational replacement, okay? So this is kind of repetitive. 3 key arguments from the AI jobs report. And once again, I'm not gonna read all these words for you. You can have them in the PDF. Anthropic data does not show massive job losses, which I don't know if you remember the first slide I showed you. I think there's some indication that regardless of what Anthropic is saying, there are companies that are buying it, okay, for whatever malignant reasons they have, okay? So, conclusion is current evidence does not support claims of imminent widespread job displacement. I don't know what statistics they're looking at. There's enough indication that it is having an impact, okay? Capability is not the same thing as deployment. So I'm going to show you the radar in the next slide. That's going to go a little bit deeper into that and show you what I'm talking about there. Number 3, jobs are priced by time or by outcomes. This is a concept that I don't know whether I fully buy into. I think one of the value elements that they're trying to redefine as far as tokens are concerned is clients are expecting tech companies not to build them tokens by how much time somebody is using an AI system, but by the actual output that it generates, okay? So that's an ongoing discussion. So these are some of the things. Now let's talk about pretty much the most important. You know, ever gotten a report that's on 10 pages long and there's one graphic in there that makes up the real value of it? It's this graphic right here, okay? And let me explain to you what this graphic is showing you. This shows you, I think it's 23 different occupations. It's not all the occupations. Very top is management. Then it goes business, finance, computer, stuff like that, right? So what is the red spider diagram? The red spider diagram shows you what AI is covering right now from its functionality. And I don't even know if this is up to date. I think I would expect that red blob to be a little bit bigger, okay, or more distributed. The blue shows the potential of AI. And once again, I'm a marketing person by training, so every time I see a graphic, my first question is, who wrote the graphic? What was their intent? How are they trying to manipulate me? If you ask me, if I look at this graphic with a certain level of suspicion, I would say what they're trying to do is they're trying to sell you the value of AI and gaslight you into using it more. I still acknowledge this to a certain extent and say, you know what, I think the graphic has a certain value. And I think it's a good attempt to create a statistical statement, right? I'm going to take this spider diagram, which is impressive but kind of harder to read, and roll it out into one line. And this is what it would look like, okay? Once again, here are the different areas. Red shows what AI covers. Blue shows what it potentially could cover. You can see that even from AI's perspective, there's a huge segment of the workforce that it doesn't even claim to be able to cover. Okay, and those are more the manual labor type things, okay? Now, I'm going to take a look at it from a different perspective because that's the way I think. Let's leave AI out of the question and ask ourselves personally, okay, based on our capacity, our attention span and capability, okay, what is our actual performance? And I would say it would be the red here, okay, over these different areas. So there's some disciplines where we have a higher level of performance, and there's other areas where we have a huge potential for improvement. And what you see in blue is the potential human capacity if we used basic AI. That's the value proposition of AI. Not to replace you, but to enhance your capacity and your capability. That is the value proposition of AI, and this has nothing to do with replacing employees, okay? I'm going to go a step further. Okay, because if we take this as human potential, this human potential with basic AI, what advanced use of AI should do, it should exponentially increase our capacity and capabilities. Now, I'm going to say this. There is no need for human replacement when it comes to legal, medical, and a bunch of other reasons, because right now, okay, we don't have enough medical personnel, we don't have enough personnel anywhere to provide the best service that our clients actually deserve. I don't care what industry you're in, okay? If you have a medical procedure that you have, even if you're in a socialized medicine in Europe, you have to sometimes wait 6 months, okay, before you can actually get an appointment, okay? Let alone get an appointment for a validation that you need an operation, right? If you can increase that with AI, that doesn't replace the doctor. It just makes the doctor more effective. Legal. Most human beings do not have access to legal rights. I'm going to say this again. Most companies, most citizens do not have fair and equal access to legal rights because legal costs are exorbitant and it's difficult to find a good lawyer. Okay? So we don't need to replace lawyers. What we need to do is we need to increase their capacity to deal with the volume of issues that need to be handled. If you look at the dockets of judges, they're backed up for months, if not years. Okay? This is the potential. And that's what this green is. Not replacing human beings, but creating enhancement of what they can. And that's, I think, a value proposition that needs to be pushed. Okay? So let's talk about amplifying outcome-priced work, right? So companies pay for judgment or for outputs, okay? Judgment, responsibility, decisions, right? Results, big picture thinking, accountability, proactivity, creativity, sense of urgency, agility, right? Problem solving, social engagement. And if you look at these different performers here, doctors, lawyers, accountants, engineers, architects, consultants, executives, programmers, scientists, and politicians. This is just the short list of people that are being paid by output, okay? AI is there not to replace them, but to help them out, to be their helping hand so that they can perform more. Ultimately, every employee should be able to generate more revenue for a company just because their capacity has gone up and their capabilities as well. Okay? So bottom line, the question isn't whether AI can perform tasks. The question is whether the profession sells time or sells outcomes. Once again, I don't know if I buy into this time-priced work or outcome-priced work. I think the outcome-priced work, if you could measure it, would be a good measurement for performance, especially when it comes to tokens. The greatest disruption may occur in entry-level knowledge work, compression of traditional career ladders rather than eliminating total professions, okay? I will say that this leads to another problem that you can see. A lot of consultancy firms and a lot of knowledge workers, a lot of law firms are not hiring junior, or IT people are not hiring junior staff because AI now covers their workload. But you're going to need those employees in 3 to 5 to 10 years to fill the shoes of those who are leaving, the senior people, and you cannot become senior if you don't go through junior. And that's one of the big dangers of AI displacement. Misconception number 5, AI is a net positive for society and AI will benefit all. Yeah. Let's see what that means. Potential social benefits for improved health, economic growth. Some of this is repetitive. Better education for all. Solving global challenges, enhancing safety and security. Smarter cities, environmental, empowerment of people, scientific discovery, and improved quality of life. You don't see this being communicated a lot. I mean, you hear people talk about it theoretically, but you can sense that they're talking about it theoretically. Okay. Here are some of the potential detriments of AI technology, which fewer people are talking about. Massive job loss and displacement, okay, and social unsettlement. Feudal rule, decline of democracy. I think Peter Thiel has without hesitation said that democracy is antithetical to progressive capitalism, and we need a CEO as a president. He should be, it's a good thing he moved to Argentina because he'd be the first person that I would put in handcuffs. Decline of democracy is not something that we need to look forward to, okay? It's not going to create a better world. The opposite side of that is the big brother surveillance, right? I think a lot of people are hoping that, with all this dystopia that we're going to be creating with AI, the only way for these tech giants to protect themselves is to buy bunkers in remote areas, to make so much money they can hire their own armies, and use Palantir to know whatever threat is coming their way before it comes anywhere close to them, right? Wealth gap explosion. Corporate socialism, which means who's going to pay for all these data centers? Who's going to pay when the bubble bursts? We are, right? So corporate socialism out the wazoo. Other examples of detriments would be predatory capitalism for the rest of us, right? Social inequality, water contamination because of the cooling aspect, energy consumption, global warming, and overall social disruption, okay? Other factors that one should not discount is the decline of human intelligence. There are studies that show that the present generation, which has been exposed to the smartphone, has less brain plasticity than generations before. Every generation before has shown a marginal increase in size, weight, and also intelligence, except for this new generation. They've gotten maybe bigger and stuff like that, but they haven't become more intelligent. There's a certain plasticity. There's even a term for it, I think, which is called social dementia or social media dementia or something like that, that shows that too much exposure to the screen and not enough active thinking process without the pains and struggles of what it takes to become intelligent has a negative impact. Loss of human agency, right? We're no longer going to rely on what people think or feel or how they feel they're being treated. We're going to leave it to the hands of a computer to decide what's right and good and wrong for you, right? Which leads us to a dystopic future. I think we often propagate movies in Hollywood. I don't know if it's wishful thinking, right? I don't think anybody wants the Terminator to become a true thing, right? Loss of true innovation. Okay, this is something which is also a drawback of huge technological advancement, is that with the huge investment in a new technology, what happens is it robs the resources and the air and the capital for anything else. Okay, so any other innovation that we would need, for example, to counteract global warming or to create more energy efficiently, right, goes out the window unless it serves the AI, okay, which is a big challenge. A meaningless existence. A lot of people are saying, hey, look forward to it. You don't have to work anymore, okay? And what are we going to do with ourselves, right? Who's going to pay the bills? We're going to have universal income. You actually believe that the people that are robbing us blind right now, the 0.01% are who shouldn't have that wealth to begin with, okay, are actually going to endorse global income? It's not going to happen. I mean, we don't even want to pay for social welfare and medical services now, right? And another big danger is that this is all a bubble that is going to eventually crash, okay? So these are some of the potential detriments. I've broken this down, and once again, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I'm going to show them to you, and you can go through it in the PDF if you want. This is if you want to have that detailed view. You don't have to agree with all of this, but this was put together by myself and by AI. Here it shows the benefits and threats to each stakeholder. So tech companies anticipate explosive growth and market leadership, new revenue streams, business models, scaled economies of scale, data advantage, innovation, talent management, strategic influence, and ecosystem control. Their actual potential danger is that when this all goes wrong, there's going to be a serious crackdown, antitrust actions, legal liability, safety responsibility. They're going to be held accountable for some of their behavior, reputational damage and loss of trust, rising costs and margin pressures, talent wars, and geopolitical and supply chain risks. So those are some of the things. Corporations, anticipated benefits, greater productivity, data-driven innovation, enhanced customer experience, competitive advantage, risk management, fraud detection, real potential dangers, uncertain ROI, and wasted investment. That's a big one. A lot of CEOs' heads are going to roll in a couple of years' time, right? Data privacy and cybersecurity risk, regulatory, legal compliance, workforce disruption and talents loss, reputational damage and overdependence and loss of the human edge. These are, okay? And it goes on with employees, right? What's the danger for employees? What's the danger for consumers and for citizens, governments and private sectors? Society and humanity as a whole. There's a lot of slides in here. I don't want to put you to sleep by going through each one of them, but if you want to deep dive on them and you want to take that perspective, you can look at it in the PDF. Let's talk about the AI bubble, okay? Creating a bubble. How does one create a bubble? Well, there needs to be some kind of investment surge, and there needs to be some kind of narrative, some kind of story that inspires people to say, hey, to believe in something greater than themselves, okay? Big issue that we have is only 5% of the $1.2 trillion dollars invested in AI are actually being reported generating a visible return of investment. Now, there are some, to be fair here, there are some studies that, you know what, we need to create a new measuring concept for performance in AI, because since it augments and doesn't necessarily replace work. We don't have an actual, some people say we should measure it like joules, like calories. How many calories does it save us or expend, and how much energy does it create as a whole? It's an interesting concept, but I think we're far from having a real viable and understandable example from there. So I think maybe it's unfair to say it only gives you a 5% return on investment. But the question is, do we know what we're measuring and how to measure it, right? And then we're going to talk about the classical bubble dynamic. First you want to create hype and FOMO, fear of missing out, massive inflow of capital, sky-high evaluation, disappointing results, correction and crash, reset value emerges, and there's a wholesale of companies. That's why I'm saying in 3 to 4 years, I think 70% of the AI hype companies out there will no longer be existing. They will go the way of the dodo bird, okay? Bubble warning. How can you tell? Well, when revenue lags investment, that's a warning sign. Circular and dependent deals. I'll give you a graphic that goes into that. That's a big issue right now. There's a kind of a cluster of big tech companies that are using creative and weird accounting to pretend like they're making revenues, but they're just passing their IOUs back and forth, right? Creative accounting and earnings simulation, losses are hidden, not reported. Actually, those three kind of belong together. Valuations detached from reality, that also belongs together. And then the big problem is when you can no longer deny it, and it's kind of the Enron effect. You can use creative accounting to a certain extent, but somewhere along the line, the bubble will burst, right? So here are 10 of the biggest risks we face when the bubble does burst, okay? Massive capital destruction. I think the saying is right now 30% of the S&P 500 is represented through AI. So when that goes down, it's going to affect everybody. I have money invested. People have 401ks. We're going to have a huge devaluation of currency, and we're going to have a big crash. And when that happens, we're all going to pay for it, right? Trillionaires, yeah, they'll lose a certain percentage of their wealth, but they have so much, it's not really going to rock the boat. Corporate investment freezes. So we'll have actually the opposite of innovation. We'll have everybody freezing up and not spending anything. Even on things that would be good, we're not going to spend it because we're all now burnt, and now we're smarter because we fell, fool me once, whatever the saying is, fool me twice. Nobody wants to be fooled a second time. So even if you come with a legitimate proposition for innovation, we're going to have a really decimated market for investment if the AI bubble bursts. We're going to have banking and credit risk, right? Banks are going to fold. They're going to hold open their hands again and say, we can either fold or you can bail us out again for the 100th millionth time. Job losses, failing consumer confidence, data center overcapacity. You know what? I don't think we're going to have an overcapacity, because if you look at the math of data centers, the chips they use are good for 3 years. The cost of the chips and then refitting is so above and beyond any kind of revenue that's being generated. We're not going to have overcapacity. We're just going to have a bunch of dud data centers that are wasting space. Government fiscal exposure. Governments are going to have some serious issues. We're going to be pulling our belt tighter. Okay. Financial market contagion, loss of public trust, and reduced innovation. These are some of the factors. Some of them are redundant, but it's kind of what's going to happen. Bubble indicators that we have right now. The statistic is to improve it is 33% of the S&P 500, which is the top 500 companies in the United States, are represented through AI. You have the statistics there, and you can see where they're split up. And every one of those companies are one of those companies that is pushing the so-called earnings back and forth and simulating value, right? And there's massive capital spending. Yes, there's huge money, 80 billion, 100 billion, 75 billion. Oracle spent 40 billion. Meta, we can't stop building data centers. One of my creative directors, Nelly, was telling me that even in Austria, they're planning a data center, and I'm sure there'll be a public revolt against it. But everybody wants to build a data center, right? That seems to be the business model. This graphic kind of shows you, I'm not an expert. I can't break this down for you 100%. I just have a rudimentary understanding of it. But here are some of the players. Amazon has a big stake in the AI, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, the AI startup ecosystem, Alphabet, CoreWeave, other AI projects, AI Labs, and Google Cloud. One that's missing is Oracle, right? All of these companies, and then you also have, of course, SpaceX with Grok and stuff like that. All of these companies are basically buying their chips from, one that's missing also on here is NVIDIA, right? Are buying their chips from NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is making a lot of revenue theoretically, but there is, there's IOUs, and you kind of pass this back and forth. So right now, this is an ecosystem of companies that are colluding together to simulate and uphold the concept of a viable, profitable enterprise, which is far from being the case.
In 5 Minuten ist es 5.
In 5 Minuten ist es 5. In 4 Minuten ist es sogar 5. Good. Good. So, bubble indicators. Questionable declared earnings is a bubble indicator. Utopian valuations is a bubble indicator. What critics worry about? Extreme concentration, fewer companies drive a large share of the index. Very large capital expenditures, interconnected investments, dependency on future AI demand, which is not sufficiently there. Valuation ahead of realized profits. What supporters argue in contrast, transformation, innovation, world superiority, infrastructure and build out is necessary, long-term productivity and gains, strong balance sheets and historical precedent. So these are some of the counter arguments that we have. Misconception number 6. We're getting close to the end. Everyone wants AI. That's what everybody would love to make you think. But I don't think there's a single one, me included, who doesn't have the urge to say, I mean, as much as it excites us and it's fun to play with, do we really all want it? And if you look at those classical videos, and there's a bunch of videos on YouTube, graduations this year, 2026, right? Every commencement speaker that took the time to during their speech during graduation use the word AI either got booed or people actually walked out. And I think this is something we need to be listening to. I think we need to be aware of it. So let's take a look at the misconception or the belief of whether everybody wants it. So let's take a look at some of the stakeholders. Stakeholders is a good way to kind of get an overview of who's involved. So employees and workers definitely are stakeholders. Consumers and citizens are. Governments and public sector, academia and researchers, artists, creators, journalists, civil society, NGOs, investors, shareholders, and younger generation, Generation Z and beyond is an alpha, I think is the next generation. I would probably still put pharmaceuticals in here or science, but I guess that falls under for academia and research. So let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at the two that we have here. Employees or worker. Why do they push back? Okay, they push back, number one, because of the fear of losing their job. Lack of involvement in the decision on how it works and if they use it, right? And probably also because of the fear of making mistakes. I think these are some of the examples. Number two, consumers and citizens. Why do they push back? They fear loss of privacy, invasion of privacy, data exploitation. Getting scammed online is easier, right? Biased or unfair AI-driven decisions if you're applying for health insurance, lack of transparency and meaningful choice. I think consumers. I think one of the favorite skits that I like is from a company in Britain called a comedy company in Britain called Little Britain that has a sketch where one of the comedians there, who always dresses up like a lady, sits at the computer in different contexts, either as a receptionist in a hospital or receptionist wherever, right? And somebody walks in and says, "I'm pregnant. I have an appointment with a doctor. My water is broken." And she looks down at the keyboard and does this with a bored face and looks up and says, "Computer says no." Let's be perfectly blunt. Present online customer support sucks. It sucks, okay? It is hard to find a company that actually knows how to satisfactorily deal with their clients online. I think Amazon is one of the few companies that does a good job at this, although they're questionable in other areas. But the fear of AI, and I've actually been serviced by AI online, is that now you're going to have an AI bot who doesn't empathize, who doesn't really listen, who doesn't really care, and is just following whatever script you give them, and will give you a quicker computer says no response. And that is how I think a lot of consumers fear AI and push back. They fear no longer being relevant, no longer being able to talk to a human being. Number three, government and public sector. Why do they push back? National security is a big issue. The Claude 5 coming out was a big issue. Unregulated AI threats, attacks on different IT infrastructures because AI can rapidly identify gaps in security. That's a huge issue, right? And then the whole social unrest factor, which would be maybe a later part of what might happen, right? So these are some of the things. Academia and researchers, lack of transparency of models and data, being able to reproduce science and create a scientific integrity. These are issues, and then just, poor referencing. These were some of the things that these people would pick. Artists and creators. This is a huge stakeholder group that's partly unhappy with AI because AI basically tells you, and there was actually an AI titan, a tech titan, who says, you know what, AI will relieve you of the pain and burden of having to learn how to play an instrument. We can circumvent that. Artists are not comfortable with AI. First of all, they're being robbed of their creative processes, their art, and they're not getting reimbursed of it. And they're being displaced. Spotify is doing a lot to create artificial artists that all sound like they're singing out of a tin can. Some of the tunes are catchy. I wouldn't say I actually have some on my phone, but it is something that they're not necessarily having. And it threatens their livelihood. And by the way, the livelihood of an artist is difficult enough as it is. Civil society and NGOs, what do they push back on? It amplifies inequality, threat to human rights. What Palantir does is highly questionable. What Google search is used for war crimes or military excursions. Environmental, social impacts, lack of inclusion in processes. These are some of the fears of civil society. Investors and shareholders, that they're not going to get their money back. And right now, it doesn't look like they will. Okay? They're going to have to do some real serious bailout or creative accounting to be able to compensate for the gap between revenue and costs, right? So they're afraid of a bubble, poor governance, long-term value requires responsible AI. Then somewhere along the line, the whole ESG was going to be here. Younger generations, you know what? The younger Generation Z grew up with a phone. They never knew anything but social media and the phone and digitalization. And they also have the highest level of mental health issues of any generation out there. I empathize with them. They're really struggling. COVID did another number on them. They are afraid of how AI is going to shape their future and whether they have a future. They perhaps have taken out loans or spent a lot of money to get an education, and now they're told they're no longer needed. These are probably some of the greatest advocates against AI or that have reservations with AI. And believe it or not, these are the people who are going to shape our future. So their opinion matters. Common themes of pushback across all stakeholders. Here's 10 of them. Privacy and surveillance, bias and discrimination, transparency and accountability, job displacement, we've said that several times, theft of work and intellectual property, which is a legitimate fear, environmental impact, safety and security, inclusion and equity, big issue, human control and governance, and human values and dignity. These are the concerns that almost all stakeholders have. I just don't think that that politics is doing their fair share to look out for us. Like I said, I'm going to have 2 politicians on here in a podcast upcoming about the future of political leadership, and I'm going to address that subject. But that we need a political cast that understands that their role is social responsibility and accountability. They serve us. They don't serve the 0.1% or 0.01%. What stakeholders demand across the board: stronger regulation and enforcement, transparency and explainability, accountability, inclusion in AI decision makers, making, which we rarely are, although many neighborhoods where they're trying to build data centers are pushing back. Ethical standards and audits, protection rights and privacy. That also means from a legal perspective. Sustainable AI development, which means you gotta bring sustainability and AI technology development in line with one another, okay? We need better ways to cool down systems that are more economical, less energy consuming, and don't waste our limited resources. AI that serves people, not just profits. AI, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna sound a little bit like a revolutionary, but I don't care, I'll stand by it. AI is a social asset. It is a social good, and it should be there to serve us. That companies need to make money for it to work is understandable, but it should be under control from the government, and it should serve the people. So much as it's not a walk in the park. Not everybody is bending over backwards to say, hey, please give me AI. AI is inevitable. Let's talk about this one. Number 7. What are the arguments for it being inevitable? Okay, so we're not going to be able to avoid it. Well, exponential technological process. The cat is out of the bag. Pandora's box is open, right? There are massive economic incentives. We already spent so much money, we want our money back, or somebody wants their money back. So whether we like it or not, those are facts. Okay, data is everywhere. Like I said, the cat is out of the bag. Broad and growing applications. It's slowly getting its way into our lives. We have it on our phones. We have it on our computers. The basic functions of AI are almost undeniable and irrepressible. Right. 5, human AI collaboration. We're getting used to it. We like it. Whether you have a bot that you speak to in your house, do this, do that, or whether you're using actually other AI functions, there's plenty of applications. Global competition. There is competition, and if we want to compete, we're going to have to participate in some form or fashion, right? Self-reinforcing momentum is another part of it, and social adaptation are the things. Now, what are things that tell us maybe it's not as inevitable as we think? Number 1, the limitation of technology, or technology is not destiny. There are a lot of concerns that we're still going to have to navigate, okay? Economics can change. We have the highest deficit in the history of mankind. That is not sustainable indefinitely. And once there's a crunch in the purse, people will rethink what and how they use AI. Data and resources have limits, right? I don't know how many data centers we want to build. Are we willing to really sacrifice so much of our real estate and our natural resources to make that work? Is there not a limitation to this? Regulation has not really been such a big factor, not a big enough factor as it should be, but at least the European Union is using some caution here and having an impact, hopefully a positive impact on the rest. Number 5, social license is not guaranteed. Just because we bring out a new product doesn't mean, and right now the engagement or the adoption of AI bots across the society are not as high as most people would like it to be. Okay, and the question is, do we even have enough users to be able to finance what it costs, right? Human choices shape the future. We still have a choice. Technical limitations remain, and complex systems resist change. So these are the factors that speak against it being 100% inevitable. So one of the things that I've said continually to AI experts that I talk to, and I've never received a positive feedback to it, but I think it's and by the way, when I asked ChatGPT to make me a slide for this, a graphic, it asked me whether I was not violating the ethical principles of it, and I said, well, I'm not advocating for what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it is a historical fact. You know what? We often talk about how AI can be a danger to humanity, but I think we need to ask the reverse question just as much. What is the greatest danger to AI? And I think the greatest danger to AI is the human element, okay? In every factor, and in our inability to manage it, in our inability to implement it ethically and sustainably, economically, all of those factors. But what I often say, the biggest danger for AI, the most dangerous entity on the world today, is a Neanderthal with a club. Put differently, if we do not control the evolution of AI and we actually start firing people wantonly and think that AI will replace us, first of all, I don't think that's going to work. But any form of disruption where hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are unemployed on the street is a recipe for disaster. Nobody is going to go quietly, okay? As soon as we cannot pay our rent, as soon as we cannot pay our food, a Molotov cocktail or a drone is the only thing we need to disrupt the AI technology, okay? I think it is technological hubris, okay? I think plenty of superpowers have learned this lesson in the last 100 years. Even the greatest superpowers, okay, have failed against some of the most insignificant and meek seeming opponents, okay? The Taliban can write history books on how many empires they've defeated. So to actually think that the citizen who's going to be impacted potentially negatively by AI is not eventually going to put their foot down either politically by how they vote, and if that doesn't work, by whatever means possible, is sorely mistaken. And the other thing, to think that your Palantir face recognition is going to protect you, you've got another thing coming, okay? So this is not something that I'm advocating for, but as soon as there's disenfranchisement, a loss of trust, anger builds, a spark ignites, revolts erupt, systems will collapse, and it goes faster than you think. And if you look at the history of humanity, we've gone through incredible cycles of high culture that were destroyed overnight through the barbarians at the gate. And I'm not even saying the barbarians are negative. The barbarians are always at the gate. And if you don't include them in the overall benefit of this system, they're going to come for you, okay? The next misconception, AI will autonomously run companies. I told you there's a couple of different LinkedIn ads that simulate this. What does that mean? There's a multiple layer. It means that an executive layer, there's a set direction, make decisions, allocate resources. It's part of the corporate strategy, kind of like what Klarna did, the example I gave you beforehand. There's forecasting. Next level would be the functional and operational level, involving that. Then you've got levels 3 and 4. The key thing to make this work would be to use agents in the process. And there are a bunch of nifty agents out there that do amazing things that will shock you. The only problem is for every agent example that I hear that was successful, I can tell you of at least one other one where something was either compromised from a security perspective, from a control perspective, or from a quality perspective. So those are some huge issues as well, right? So here's a basic theoretical framework of what you would need to do, 1, 2, 3, 4. Executive layer, operational layer, agents, robotic layer, data tech, infrastructure, which is key. Once again, poor input is poor output. And then you've got how it works. You have to collect data, analyze, understand, decide, plan, execute, automate, monitor, optimize, learn, and adapt. But once again, I think a big misconception is if AI generates content, there's still not a conscious process taking place there. Who receives that? Who hears it? Who responds to it? Or is one chatbot now going to talk to another chatbot and we're not going to be involved? I don't think that's how we want it or how society is designed. But this is a theoretical concept that you might be able to create a company that sells products, that designs products, that puts it in a warehouse and sends it out. But still, there is a physical process that needs to be integrated for that to work. But I don't see this as being something that will emotionally move people long term. Why it's not a good idea. Here's a couple reasons why. First of all, AI has limits. We need to understand it. It doesn't have true understanding. It struggles with ambiguity. It's prone to mistakes. Judgment and ethics require humans. Once again, that's an issue. Creativity and innovation comes from humans. I'll give you a real life example. If you watched the World Cup, you might have noticed that there were a lot of football players on the pitch whose cleats were pink. Okay, now you might say, well, no big deal. Pink is a hot color. And you might say maybe it's a form of inclusion or of the players. No, what happened, and this is actually a study that was done, is that all of the different companies were looking for a differentiating factor on how to design their cleats, and all of the main companies used AI to ask the question, what would be the best color palette to do their shoes in? And all of the AI agents said the same thing. Pink, or this fuchsia, would be the fuchsia, and I think yellow would be, that combination would be the best solution. And the problem you had now is if you remember those shoes that were pink and yellow, you wouldn't be able to tell me what brand it was because there is no differentiating factor. One of the biggest problems with creativity and innovation is if you're going to one source to ask for it, you're going to get across the board, everybody's going to get more or less the same answer, and that is exactly the opposite of creativity. That is mainstream, okay? Complexity and novelty will always exist. Accountability can't be automated, although a lot of people would like it to be that way. Distance yourself from the client and create a barrier so that they can't reach you, but that's not sustainable. Human connections drive business. I say it time and time again. In a world that's fully connected, human touch still makes a difference, right? Data and systems are flawed. We can't forget a system is only as good as its data, how it's updated, how we maintain that data. There needs to be an overriding concept. AI is not going to do that for you, right? Security and misuse, risks are real. If your AI agent goes off on a tangent, and this is a real case that happened not too long ago, you might need to use another AI to shut it off because nothing else will work. And that's a nightmare scenario, right? Employment and society and economy matter, right? So our human beings still matter. We're not going to go the way of the dodo just because we have a bunch of computers now, right? And purpose beyond profit. These are factors that are going to become stronger issues as we move forward, right? The evidence so far. Companies using AI extensively are more productive, but still employ people. AI excels at narrow tasks, not whole organizations. Every fully autonomous pilot still requires human oversight, and even the most advanced companies use AI to augment, not to replace. Okay? Historical lessons for this: Roman Empire, Industrial Revolution, nuclear power, the internet. Let's pick one of those. I saw another Instagram reel that recently talked about how misguided sometimes the enthusiasm over certain disruptive technologies are. When science invented or developed radiation, they said, oh my God, this is an amazing technology. This is going to revolutionize the world. And they used radiation for everything. I'm not joking. If you went to a shoe store, they had sold shoe stores radiation equipment so that you could x-ray people's feet to figure out what shoes they needed. Okay? They x-rayed everything. If you had a migraine, they x-rayed your head. Okay? They used radiation for everything because they were trying to make it profitable. I think this is a great example of the danger that we might face with AI. Okay? A better path for what we're talking about is to make it human-centric, right? Human plus AI collaboration, which means human wisdom and values matter. AI speed and scale plus trust and purpose and accountability equals a sustainable success. We can do without AI. AI can't do without human support. Okay. Misconception number 9, whoever wins the AI arms race will rule the world. There's a lot of arguments, historical arguments that would support this. I think there's a misguided paradigm in the economic world today that business is war. And destruction is everything. And everything we develop in society has to have some kind of martial context or martial application because we love to use the deep pockets and coffers of the Department of Defense to finance whatever we do, whether it's Gore-Tex or Kevlar. Those are all, or Ripstop. These are all systems, internet, all systems that were developed on military dime. But the question is that true? Are we really in a existential military threat if we don't keep pace, right? So 10 arguments that support this. AI multiples offer a form of power, okay? It amplifies economic output, military capability, drone capability. Winner gains compounding advantage over all domains. So whoever's best and quickest at it theoretically could have a competitive advantage over others. Economic dominance becomes inevitable. I think Americans have become accustomed to continually pulling a new rabbit out of the hat to stay on top of the global economic gain. Okay, we don't compete with developing countries anymore when it comes to production. China, India, and other countries are taking that away from us. So we're trying to pull a new technology out of the hat that we can be best at without being beat by countries that have a cheaper labor force and can outdo us. But the problem is, the global situation, especially in China or India, we're no longer competing just with the cheapest labor. We're also competing with an intellectual force, an intellectual population that is so deep. I think the statistic is for every student in the United States, if you look at the total amount of people who are studying in the United States, China has at least that many high profile or high potential or on the dean's list. And I think every Indian, I think the traditional statement is every Indian has at least 2 degrees, if not 3 or 4, right? So this is a huge issue, right? Economic dominance becomes inevitable, right? Military superiority will be decisive if we have the better technology, if our systems are better. But if you look at it, you know what? There's been a big shift in technology what military is concerned as well. If you look at the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, or you look at the conflict between the U.S. and Afghanistan, it's proven, you know what? You don't need always high tech to be a much bigger, much better equipped opponent, right? So cost is not always the determining factor, but it's something to consider, right? Control of information means control over people. If I have access to everything you do, I have ultimate big brother authority and can punish you when you misguide. Although everybody talked about China having, the system of bonus and minus for behavior, the social point system. I've just recently heard that China has gotten rid of it because they realized that it had a negative trade-off factor and has gotten rid of it. But that's one concept. Fifth would be scientific breakthroughs and acceleration of exponentiality, which means if AI could go back to the concept, really solve some of our problems, if we could do better protein sequencing, if we can develop quicker solutions for cancer, that would really give us a societal benefit, which would give us a huge financial benefit on the market, let alone a health issue, right? Surveillance states become unbeatable. I think that's what a lot of these are hoping. Even if our society sucks, at least we can control you because we can see where you are and control you. AI creates the winner takes all dynamics. Global standard setting belongs to the leader, right? So whoever's got the best system can determine how all other systems more or less work. Although once again, there's plenty of examples of how Chinese models that are cheaper and more readily available were developed for a fraction of the price and with equal speed. Resource control is enhanced by AI, so you have a better optimization of your resources. And dependence becomes leverage. So when other people have to use your data centers, have to use your cloud, have to use your AI systems, you have a better control over the global market, right? So history, if we look at it from that, what are historical precedents for this, right? British Empire controlled the seas, trade routes, and industrial power because they were a naval power, okay? From the 1940s to the 1990s, U.S. after World War II led by manufacturing, nuclear power, and innovation, right? The information age today belongs less to countries, but more to companies, right? And the AI age is whoever is next. So the conclusion would be create wealth, shape societies, wins wars, sets the agenda, writes the future. Winner takes it all. That's kind of the playbook that a lot of these people are selling us on. I would like to take it in a different direction. I think there are equally 10 reasons why no one can win the race and rule the world. Is number one, the world has become far too integrated, far too dependent on one another, far too complex and diverse for that to be capable, okay? And one of the things that AI does is it puts a much bigger weapon in the hand of the small individual. A small individual can outdo a company that has more money or more resources. Power is distributed and not centralized, although there are huge efforts to do the contrary. There's a huge counter movement, and in the next couple of years, you'll see that more expressed, where people are going to demand their rights back. People are not subjects to be controlled. You can fool the part of the people for some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. That's the revolutionary with the Molotov cocktail. That's the Neanderthal with the club that I'm talking about, right? So they're going to have a word to speak, right? AI depends on human infrastructure, and that human infrastructure, the problems surrounding it haven't been solved yet. So that's an economic and technical issue, right? Economies need trust, demand, and human participation. You need clients who are willing to pay. Innovation comes from human imagination and not from AI. That's another factor. So we can use AI to accelerate, but not necessarily to innovate. 7, data and AI are not perfect, okay? Imperfect data provides imperfect output. This is a huge factor. 8, geopolitics ensures permanent competition. 9, ethics, laws, human rights will set boundaries, although we're undermining it as best as possible. History proves that no empire lasts forever. So whatever technological advantage you think you're going to have with AI, it's fleeting. Okay, the technology is too dynamic and too easy to replicate for you to have a standalone benefit. Okay, and it's usually the first mover that has the biggest amount of cost it's usually the follower that benefits from that and can develop and create leaner and easier solutions, right? What good does it do for a nation to spend trillions on infrastructure and then for somebody else to come along and say, listen, I can do that. I've replicated the same infrastructure at a fraction of the cost because I've been more innovative, right? What history teaches us, empires rise through military and economic technology and fell due to the overreach and resistance of humans, right? History has also taught us that no single power will ever control the world completely. It never has and never will. Humanity's future is shaped by collaboration, not domination. Real power is shared, not owned. Realistic future. Many players will build and use AI. AI will augment humanity, not replace it. Human values and choice will guide AI, and a better future depends on how you choose to use it. I am a bigger advocate of this slide than of the first one, okay? 2 chapters to go. One last chapter of misconceptions and then some guiding principles of what I think might be a summary of how to approach a constructive and viable AI transformation, okay? Misconception, regulation, caution, prudence, circumspection, which means being safety first, are antithetical or contrary to AI innovation, which I would not agree with. But let's take a look at this, right? Arguments for deregulation. Regulation slows you down. That's the biggest argument that people use. Global competition leaves no room for delay. Screw the safety, take off the brakes, go for it, right? Point your skis downhill and let them rip, right? Don't worry if you know how to brake. AI still is still too new to regulate effectively, and bureaucrats are famously slow in adapting to change. One size fits all rules don't work, so creating rules is not even possible, which is typical rhetoric. It's not true. And self-regulation is more flexible. I love this when companies says, listen, you know what, just trust us, okay? It doesn't put me at ease when a large chemical company says, you know what, don't regulate us, we'll take care of the environment ourselves. And we have plenty of examples where that is not the case. Other arguments for deregulation would be overregulation kills investment. Yeah, people don't want to spend as much money. Regulation creates uncertainty. Focus on the risks, not reward. Compliance is costly and complex. That's partly true. Regulation today becomes a limitation tomorrow. So these are the arguments against it. Move fast, innovate freely, win the future. That's what companies want. Companies want principle-based guidelines, industry-led standards, risk-based approach, ongoing dialogue, not mandates. You know what? This would presuppose that all companies are morally responsible, which they are not. It is a historical fact that every company will take advantage of every loophole that they possibly can unless government stands to protect society. You can try to tell me of something else if you want. So, where are arguments for regulation? Okay, arguments for regulation. Or let's talk about when the first mover advantage occurs. When you can shape the market, when you can build the brand leadership, when you create switching costs, when you enjoy network effects, benefits from scale and learning, right? So first movers theoretically set the rules and followers play catch up. That's the old logic, right? And that's the logic. And here's the classical first mover scale. You start as a pioneer, you build momentum, you scale, you entrench, you defend, you extend, and then there's a risk of disruption. At the end of your product life cycle, when you've made your return of investment, that's when you have protection. Listen, AI has flaunted any form of regulation, saying, screw it, everything we do is ethical, everything we do is fair game. There is no protection against competitors. If they want to copy you, they will. And there's no way that you can stop them under the present mentality of resisting regulation, okay? So let's give 10 counter arguments for regulation. Number one, speed without guardrails leads to setbacks, okay? There's a danger to letting it rip, okay? I don't want to drive a fast car without it having a brake, or a safety system or an airbag, right? Global competition needs a level playing field. We need to live what we need to be the future that we want to see, right? We can regulate effectively if we act now. Flexible, principle-based rules can work. Self-regulation is not enough, right? Over-regulation is a risk, but so is under-regulation, okay? We can't afford to let the cat out of the bag without having some sort of protection. Certainty drives investment in innovation. Okay, so understanding that there's some guardrails gives investors also a certain semblance of maybe less profits, but therefore more safe profits, right? Focus on benefits and risks both matter. You want to look, modern risk management always takes a look managing the opportunity and the risk in balance. That's the paradox, right? Compliance costs are an investment, not a burden, right? So by the way, doing it right the first time, but doing it a little bit slower is better than doing it fast and doing it wrong and then reaping the negative consequences and costs. Today's rules shape tomorrow's leader. And not limit them, okay? These are some of the arguments for regulation, and I'm more on this side, right? Why the first mover doesn't always matter when it comes to winning AI. So let's take a look at the argument here. The argument here is technology changes too fast, right? High cost and uncertain returns, data ecosystems, advantage comes much, much later. Standards and winners emerge over time. Okay. Once again, it's really, really different to create a differentiation in this market. Whoever's number one today will be number three tomorrow. That's almost inevitable. Regulation and ethics risks are real. These are factors to consider. Talent war is expensive for pioneers. Okay. So first movers must attract and retain scarce AI talent, and you can see it on the market right now. If you look at the main players, right, a lot of them work for companies. These companies tell them what they want them to do. They give them a lot of money. There's a fallout, and they walk out the door, and before you know it, they started up their own company, and they're doing the same thing you're doing, and there's no way that you could stop them, okay? Use cases are often unclear early on. Followers learn from their mistakes, right? Customers preferred proven solutions. If you're going to sell me an AI product, I'd rather know that it's safe than unsafe, right? Just because you come out with OpenClaw doesn't mean I'm installing it on my PC, okay? Especially after all the nightmare stories that I hear, right? Sustainability and unit economics matter most. So long-term advantage comes from sustainable economics, not from being first. Okay, so I think this is a paradigm shift that we need to acknowledge, and we have been acknowledging over the last decades. Economics has matured, and it applies just as much to AI as it does to other industries. And I think this is an important lesson to learn. So to wrap this up, and it's been a long session. I hope this has been interesting and valuable to you. It was important for me to kind of get this all together and voice my opinion on it because I have strong thoughts. I don't know how valid or profound they are, but they're my thoughts. Let's, on the upside, talk how would be the best way to implement AI. So I would say this, is it inevitable to go back to that question? It's here. So it's not a question of whether it's going away. The question is, will it flourish and what position will it take in society, right? So I want to give you 4 antidotes against poor implementation, so that you get good implementation. The title of this slide is a little bit off, right? And there's 4 basic steps. Number 1, beware of the hype and don't buy into the scam, okay? Number 2, think slow. From Kahneman, don't just think fast when it comes to innovation. Think slow, right? Use deliberate thinking, critical reasoning to reduce bias, to avoid costly mistakes. You don't have to be the first mover, okay? And we'll talk about that. I often tell a lot of companies that say to me, listen, what should I do? Should I invest in AI? I said, you know what? You might do yourself a service just sitting it out. Sit it out a year. Wait and collect. Do some basic. Get your feet wet. Dabble. Look at some of the things, but don't go hook, line, and sinker into AI. Play with it a little bit, okay? Let your departments develop a strategic plan, okay? But don't be a first mover. If you sit out, if you have the balls as a CEO to sit out the hype to join AI now, you're going to save your company a lot of money. and then learn from the mistakes of other companies and adapt, okay? So think slow. Have an AI implementation framework. I'm going to talk about why that's important and what's out there for you. Know where you're starting and where you're going from. Now, there's probably more advice that I can give you, but these are the 4 minimum advice points I would give you. So let's start off with number one. Number one. The first thing you want to be aware of is you want to be, let me get the right slide here. You want to be aware of the scam, okay? We've talked about it that we are in a scam con man environment, okay? Get away from anything that promises you to get rich quick or give you benefits quickly, but is highly expensive of it. Be aware of exclusive access or exclusive knowledge thing, you know, or the idea that you know something that somebody else doesn't. Don't trust any authority that's trying to sell you anything. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true, right? Beware of emotional manipulation. That it solves all your problem. That rhetoric is a classical sales element. Anything that sounds too complex, or if you don't understand what an AI expert is telling you, then you need to sit it out. You need to figure out what he's telling you or she's telling you before you buy in. Don't say, I'm going to, you know, this person sounds like an expert, I'm going to follow them blindly, right? You know, getting a quick benefit and thinking, oh my God, I have a small benefit, this is going to exponentially grow and I'm going to make millions is a big mistake, okay? Another thing which a lot of these tech giants are doing is they're massively gaslighting us all and telling us that if your AI implementation was not successful, it's not because of the AI, it's because of you. You know what? That's a bunch of crap. That's a bunch of crap. Yes, you're partly part of the reason, but there's a prolonged process that it takes to implement something, right? And all those different facets need to be covered. And then beware of the fact that, I'm going to say this again, I'm going to say 70% of the AI companies out there today that are selling you something are going to be gone tomorrow, and whatever you buy from them, okay, is going to be a bye-bye without service after that as well, okay? Let's do these individually. Think slow, right? What is think slow? This comes from Kahneman, from the book Think Fast, Think Slow. He got a Nobel Prize for his efforts in this research. He said, first of all, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Okay? Ask questions before you create an impression. Don't answer an obvious, don't accept obvious answers. Look deeper before deciding. Use data, not intuition. Okay? Intuition is valuable, but a lot of people say, I have a gut feeling. A friend of mine who's a psychologist, anytime somebody says to him, you know what, I'm going by my stomach, I'm going by my gut, he said, well, what is it exactly that you have in your gut? Okay, I'm not going to say the word, it's a 4-lettered word, gives you an idea of what sometimes the value or quality of your intuition is. I'm not saying that intuition doesn't have a hidden AI attached to it that sometimes tells you something that you're not conscious of, but go by facts. Go by facts, okay? Also, regardless of what I'm telling you, go by facts, do your own research, and not just do your own research where people tell you what you want to hear, right? Consider the full picture, right? You are a system as an organization, and this has multiple factors. If you're going to add another puzzle piece to the system, ask yourself, what impact does it have on the other parts, right? Pre-mortem and post-mortem. Imagine the project has failed, what went wrong, plan for it. This is kind of a reverse psychology thing, right? And the last one I also find very valuable, seek deconfirming evidence. So you might be convinced of something, but be open to different opinions, and doesn't mean it needs to change your mind, but be open to it, okay? Take facts on both sides of the spectrum, okay? How to think slow, make better problem definitions, avoid solving for AI instead of real business needs, chasing hype over impact, realistic expectations, better data decisions, risk and ethics by design, change and adoption, or adoption, I would say adaptability, agile approach to achieving things, and sustainable valuable. These are some basic guiding principles from Think Slow, okay? The decision-making process for all projects should be receive, pause, investigate, evaluate, involve people who know, okay, who have to carry the weight, decide, learn, and adapt, okay? This is important, okay? These are some basic guidelines. I want to do a plug here, and I'm not going to do a plug because I'm a PMI. How should I say? I'm a subject of PMI. I'm a PMI advocate because I believe in what they do. And they have made a huge initiative, what AI is concerned, to fill a certain gap. And I'm going to show you some of the documents that you can download for free as a member, right? The first thing they've done is they've created a standard for artificial intelligence, okay? It's even been recognized by ANSI. It provides a common language, governance framework, a set of principles that allow organizations to adopt AI responsibly, right? And it's for PMO leaders, portfolio managers, transformation offices, executives, anybody who wants to work with AI, okay? I'm going to go a step further. There's also something under the PMI umbrella called CPMAI. Now, that's also a certification you can get, but I'm not here to sell you a certification. If you want a certification, get it. But what you see on the screen here is 6 different documents that provide you a solid framework for yourself, okay? It is a vendor-neutral, data-centric, and iterative framework designed specifically for implementing an AI transformation, okay? The mission is to provide project professionals with clarity and confidence to lead AI projects, and every implementation of AI is a project. AI adoption is accelerated. It addresses this by providing repeatable structure to manage complexity, right? Here's a graphic that kind of shows you that life cycle. I'm not going to go into great detail. It's a classical cycle: business understanding, data preparation, model development, model evaluation, model operational, and the elements in the middle. This is a very superficial overview, but I can highly recommend it. And I'm going to say this. Every company that I've recently talked to and consulted with has asked me about my advice for AI, and all of them are struggling and looking for a roadmap, a framework that is legitimate and will not get them into trouble. PMI offers you this, and it's pretty much for free, cost of a membership, okay? So get out there, download these documents. You could do something similar, but why reinvent the wheel? Why not use something that professionals have gotten together and developed? So this is something I would strongly recommend. Last piece of recommendation: know where you are and where you want to go. Remember, ultimately, whether AI works or not is an operational level decision, right? How do your employees use it, right? So there's 3 different stages of the maturity of use here. One is humans use AI. That's level 1 and level 2. Level 1 and level 2 would be I use AI as a search system. We talked about this at the beginning. It's a better Google, and there's nothing wrong with that. Use it as a better Google. God bless. If it does, if it has the same quality of Google and provides you more interpretive information, God bless, right? If you have a question, if you need a fact, if you need something verified, wouldn't that be awesome? Okay. Next stage would be to use it as a personal assistant. So I'm going to give you an example. It's one thing to ask AI a question to get an answer. The second thing is to ask a more complicated, more integrated question. I'm going to give you an example. I was recently looking at 5 different motorcycle models to consider which one I would prefer, and I had a certain list of criteria. I just didn't want information on each motorcycle. I wanted a comparative. So I wanted it to be my personal assistant. I prompted it, and I got a great breakdown and even a recommendation of my chatbot telling me what works. So it's a great personal assistant. It can help me create PowerPoints. It can help me create Excel sheets. It can help me create formulas. It can help me do comparative analysis. It is a great assistant. It can crunch data. It can help me with that kind of stuff. So this is humans use AI, level 1 and 2. Next level, which is still manageable until number 4, is number 3. I use the function in ChatGPT, which is called projects, or in Claude, which is called projects, or it's called notebooks in other systems. It's a place where I can define a project by name, explain my role in the project, upload distinct documents that it should refer to, and then I can use a project chatbot, which I can ask questions and it will adopt the language that I have in those documents, and you can refer to them continually. It's an upgraded version of your chatbot, okay? So that's AI projects and knowledge bases. The next thing is to share that system, okay? Copilot gives you this possibility, right? With coworkers, right? To send them an invitation so that they can all access the same system. This is level 4. Brilliant concept. So you can use multiple systems, right? And you can interact. The next level, which is still in the realm of possibility for most people, is to use agents, okay? Agents that take over certain roles. This requires probably the highest level of maturity that most Tom, Dick, and Marys will need, okay? If you go to just level 4, I think you're plenty fine. I don't mess with agents because I don't have the time to correct their work or to verify whether or not they work or not. And quite honestly, my level of work is sufficient. Although I do have colleagues of mine that use agents to, summarize the daily news or to do research and stuff like that. But I'm not comfortable. I haven't found an agent that I'm comfortable with yet. But this level right here is humans work with AI versus human. So human use AI, level 1, 2. Humans work with AI. This is more advanced, 3, 4, 5. And then you have 6, 7, 8, which is AI works for humans. Okay, this is where you're getting a little bit more complicated, and this requires more guardrails, more experience, and more governance from the company as well. Right, multi-agent systems. Research agent collections, and analysis agents, writing agents, stuff like that, although you can get that at lower levels as well, right? Autonomous business function, we talked about the concept of autonomous business. I'm still waiting for a company to report back where that makes a lot of sense. I've heard of a couple companies that use this if the process is fairly simple, 3 or 4 steps, and there's guardrails in place. Anything that goes over 3 and 4 steps requires validation, control, and slows down the whole process again, which kind of makes it irrelevant, right? And then you have AI augmented enterprise, which quite honestly, these 3 levels, maybe level 6 if you're really advanced, 7 or 8, for most of us, for the majority of us, is way beyond what we need, okay? That was a long session, okay? I'm going to say thank you for listening to me if you've gotten this far. If you've gotten this far, I hope there were some things that gave you food for thought. For those of you who didn't like this format, I apologize. It was an attempt. Look forward to your feedback. We're going to take a break from AI for a while because we've done a total of 4 podcasts on AI. We're going to be moving on to Agile. We're going to be moving back onto leadership. We're going to be moving back onto transformation and program and portfolio management and PMOs to change it up a little bit. Okay. Once again, for all of those of you who have been loyal followers, thank you very much. If you're not a follower yet, I'd appreciate it if you press that button, that subscribe button. Thanks a lot for listening. See you soon.